Workday security. So for any, like, why Workday security is needed, in Workday tenant, we know that we have the Workday tenant, and there are different kind of security that are for a different group of people. Let's say as a Workday consultant, we will have certain security access. As a employee of an organization will have different kind of security access, and they will be given a additional security to perform certain tasks in the Workday tenant. And hence, this Workday security is really required to segregate, particular user to perform any kind of task, or if whether there are any kind of interface or reports or any kind of business process or integrations. So it will help the user to access certain kind of tasks that will defined for that security area. Okay, so that is the reason that we need a security in our Workday tenant, so that it will help all the users to, in order to navigate into the certain areas, they can perform certain tasks and activity. What are the tasks they are supposed to do? What are the areas or what are the functional areas they need to view in the Workday tenant? It helps the user to navigate accordingly. So now let's see what are these components of a configurable security. So what is the configurable security as a framework all about? Okay, so whenever we give any Workday user access, right? So the user will have access to the reports and the business process steps or any kind of task. So this configurable security, it will help to configure in a system for a given user what kind of data that they can access, what kind of report they can execute, or they can extract the data, or in any of the business process, like what are the roles they can play in the business process, like whether they can they can approve any request which has been triggered by a business process, or whether they can deny any business process steps, or if it will route it to any kind of security group. So this security configurable security framework, that we will configure certain securities in Workday tenant, which will help the Workday users to access the different tasks. Okay. So how do we provide access to any users? So definitely there will be different securable items, and there will be, again, there is a via the membership, right? Every securable items via membership in the security group, that will be given a permission to a domain or either a business process security policy. Okay, so directly, let's say for a user, if you are to give any access, it will consist of either a domain or a business process security policy, via which we will give you the access to a user. Okay, and so what do you mean? Again, you will have what do you mean by a domain or the business process, right? We will discuss in detail, but as a fundamental right, this configurable security, we will provide the access via different, which are securitable via a membership, say, in a security group, and then we will give a particular permission to a domain or the business process security policy. Okay, which helps the user to navigate what kind of tasks. So let's look into the different kind of configurable security component. What are the component of a security framework? So let's look into this, how a user will be given access to a certain areas, like certain task or report, how a user will given access via this security framework. Okay, so first let's see the system users, right? So there will be a group of system users in Workday which need to be given access to a security group. So again, in security group, there are different type of security groups. There will be a role-based, user-based security group. Okay, role-based and the user-based security groups will be given. We will directly assign to the user, or else there will be when any access will be given to the user, right, by Workday automatically assigned employee as a self. That is all just standard security. Okay, that will be assigned to the employee, or we can create our own security groups. Let's say for any kind of, let's say in any organization, right? We have HR business partner. So the HR business partner will be location based or the region based. So you wanted to give access to the HR business partners for a particular location. Okay. So you create your own custom security groups and you are assigning that the security groups to the user. Okay. So that is the first fundamental, that user will be assigned with the security groups. Okay. And again, within the security group, like how the security group consists of, right? So the security group, it will have consist of a security policy. When we talk about the security policy, there are two types of security policy. One is our domain security policy, and another one is the business process security policy. So the domain security policy, which we are giving view or modify access to a particular domain. Okay, and we can give access. If you want to give a particular access to any domain, then we can give either to view access or the modify access. Okay, and via security policy. Similarly, for any business process security policy. So business process means we have Workday delivered business processes are there. Let's say, for example, hire is one of the business process, termination is one of the business process, right? So we are giving the business process security policy consists of who will initiate and who are the group of employees who can initiate the business process, or who will have the view and approve access to that business process, and which security group of people will have the resent, cancel, or the correct, or we also have the delegations, right? All these business process activity will be via the business process security policy. Again, we have this functional area, right, which consists of the domain and the business process type. So the domain is nothing but it is a set of the secured items, such as the delivered report and tasks, and we have the web service, report data, and the background processing. So these are secured via particular domain. Okay, and business process type, so which includes your initiation step, any kind of business process steps, right? Like any kind of actions that need to be driven for a particular business process, or the approval, or the view, rescind, or cancel, or correct the business process. So these are all the business process type, and the domain are consist of a functional areas. Okay. So this is how our security framework, like we have the system users, and based on the requirement basis, we are providing we are giving access to the security group. So security group will have again our different secured via security policies, and these security policies will have attached to our functional area, which consists of a domain. And then this domain, we have to identify which domain the user is looking for, and then we have to provide the access to a particular domain or a business process type in order to perform the particular task in Workday tenant. So now let's look into the what it is called a functional area. What do you mean by functional areas? So as you know that Workday delivers all the applications in a functional area. So Workday has all these standard functional areas. So the functional areas such as our core compensation, or the financial accounting, staffing, benefits. So these are the functional areas that Workday delivered functional areas. Okay. So the functional areas is a main grouping of delivered domains and the business process type. Okay, so the functional areas will, again, it will have the particular domain and the business process type. And these functional areas are Workday delivered and Workday delivered by the Workday, and it cannot be changed. So when we say any functional areas, right? So Workday have all the applications that are segregated into a functional areas. And within the functional area, we will have set of domains and the business process types. Okay. So when you see any Workday tenant, right, by default, all the functional areas will not be enabled in any kind of in any Workday tenant. So based on our modules that we are working, let's say we have enabled core HCM, then you will be able to see all the functional areas that are part of the core HCM. Let's say we are not using Workday payroll, okay? Unless until the Workday payroll is not enabled in the Workday tenant, you won't be able to view those functional areas related to a payroll. So based on our models that we are using in our Workday tenant, you will be able to find those functional areas and domains and all the business process for that particular Workday module. Okay, is it clear, Sunil?
Yes. Can you be slightly more louder, please?
Okay. I think from tomorrow I have to give another change to another headset. Okay, because this mic is just moving, and then that time you are not able to hear me correctly. I have to hold my mic in my hand, or else you are not able to hear clearly. Okay, now is it clear, Sunil?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So let's see how you view a domain in the Workday tenant. Okay. So for example, we have this recruiting is, so this domain name is sort of recruiting. You can access into it. So tomorrow when we log into the Workday tenant, I will show you how we can access a particular functional area, what are the tasks to access the functional area, and how do you access the domain and the secureable items, what are the tasks for that in detail. Just for now, you can just see like where and how do we view a domain and the functional areas in Workday tenant. Okay. So view domain, you can just view any domain. And when you can see here, we have the domain security policy. Okay. So the domain security policy, it will navigate you what are the domain that has been secured under this recruitment domain. Okay. And the functional areas. So this functional area recruiting and the success planning, these are the functional areas. So this domain is consist of, okay. And we have again this subdomain also, like for each of the domain, we will have subdomain. Again, those are Workday delivered domain. You will be able to view these subdomains. And we will have the access to allowed security group type, okay. So Workday, we have the constrained and unconstrained security groups. Okay. So when you say unconstrained groups, right? Unconstrained groups are something, it is open. So when we are giving access to any domain, irrespective of like if it is unconstrained, then all the secureable item you will be able to view. You will be able to view or access those many domain for a complete functional areas. But let's say we have constrained group. Okay, we allowed security group type. If we have it is only constrained groups, then based on the constraint, whether it is constrained by location or constrained by a region, you will be able to view only for that constrained security domain access. You won't have the wider security to view a particular domain. You will not be able to access. So these are the two constrained and unconstrained groups that will be defined for any particular domain. So let's now understand the business process type. Okay. So business process type, as you know, Workday has custom standard delivered all the standard delivered business process, which allow to perform certain tasks or certain transactions, set of events or certain transaction in an automated way. Let's say, for example, we have the business process as hiring. Okay, so in hiring business process, we'll have set of tasks and transactions, right? We'll have hiring. Let's say we have hiring for India, there are certain activities need to be done. We have a hiring for US, there will be a certain forms and tasks need to be given to a different group of people, right? So we can define again in the business process type, we can define all the set of events and set of transactions which will be performed in a periodical basis or a step-by-step basis. In business process, also we are giving certain like approval, or we are providing certain kind of access, let's approval or to deny or rescind or a delegation via a security group. Let's say in a business process, we are giving access, like when the HR business partner, when they will perform any kind of hiring actions, right, then it will route it for approval. Let's say it should route it to the approval to a manager, and then it should route it approval to a HR business partners manager, like set of approval step. And this set of approval step we will define based on the security groups. We are not, routing these approval steps to any particular user. We are routing this via a security groups. So for all this business process step and the actions, it will trigger to that particular security groups. Okay, so this is very important to define in any of the business process, whether it is a hiring business process or whether it is a termination business process. Based on the actions and based on the approval steps that we are providing, it will route it to a different security groups we can define in the business process. So in the business process, we have the to-do items are also there, right? To-do activities. Let's say certain to-do activity need to be sent to a regional HR. Okay. So based on the country, we are defining again the regional HR as a security group, right? For India or for US, for Singapore, based on a country wise, we are defining. And so those to-do steps and those action items, it will route it to those particular members who are part of that security groups. So let's see here the same how you can view the termination business process, right? So for example, we have this termination business process where, okay, so here the business process step, as you can see here, the action review employee termination, we have the HR partner as a security group we have defined. So this review employee termination, it will trigger to the HR partner security groups and all the members who are part of this HR partner security groups. So this step, it will trigger for any kind of termination event that occurred for any employee. Similarly, we have, let's say, another step like termination, involuntary termination. Again, we have this approval step. It has been given to the HR executive. And we have the to-do step. Okay, it has been again to the manager. Now let's discuss about the security groups, right? So security group, again, it is a set of the system users used to grant access to Workday. So whenever we give any access to any user, right, that is via our security group. Again, the security group will have the secure domains and the securable policies that are applicable based on the membership. The user will be able to access the particular same area in a Workday tenant via the security groups. So we have, again, it depends. We have the role-based and user-based security groups, right? So user-based means we are for any kind of user we are defining any security. Let's just give an example. We have a report writer access, right? So the report writer access, we just go to any worker, we go, and then we can just add the report writer access to a worker. Then that worker will be able to access the reporting area. Okay, for that, in our Workday tenant, all kind of reporting, that to run any report or to view any custom report, run or schedule any report. So which comes under the report writer security group. We can assign to any user via the security groups, all these kind of user-based security groups. We can define via a we can define via a user-based and role-based also. Role-based, like for a particular role, right? Let's say for a business analyst role. Okay, so for a business analyst role, we define certain security areas. Okay, and certain that kind of security areas, whenever we are assigning to any employee, right, based on the role, those access will be given to the user. Okay, not based on the user specific. Let's say I'm just going to like how the user based and role based securities are assigned to any user. So whenever we have the configuring security in Workday, right, we have to first look for a user, like how we have to give the security, how we are assigning the security group, whether we want to do add or remove any security group for any domain or the business process. Okay, whether we want to grant any access or we wanted to remove any access. So based on that, we configure the securities, and then this security group will be assigned to a user, to a worker, I'm to say, to a worker in Workday tenant. Now let's understand what is the configurable security provide us. Okay, so why do we need this configurable security, and what do we do in a some configurable security framework? So whenever, for example, we have a Workday tenant, right? So Workday has all the delivered content. Workday has defined all the delivered content in any tenant. Okay. So Workday will just, whenever we enable any kind of functional areas, right? It is all why it is everything will be accessible. But when we are for a customer defined tenant, right? For a customer owned tenant, Workday tenant, we wanted to give certain kind of functionality access to certain group of people. Let's say we have an implementer, and we have a HR business partner, or we have the business analyst. So based on the roles and different type of users, we need to give particular access to this Workday tenant content. Okay. For example, as an employee, right? So as an employee in the Workday tenant, the employee will have a very limited access to view their own data based on the modules that we have enabled, we have implemented in the tenant. The employee will have very limited access to view their own data, view their profile, let's say the first name, last name, for all the personal information, or the address detail and the bank detail. So employee will have the view access to these areas which we have enabled. Okay. But let's say for a implementer access, right? For a implementer access, or for a the report writer or admin time tracking, for example, a time tracking administrator point of view, right? We are we are creating a security group which will allow them to perform certain tasks, to access the particular domain and certain functionalities in Workday. Okay, so that is how we we create our own security groups, and for our customer owned tenant, we will give a particular access to a different group of people, and based on the necessity, we are creating those custom security groups, and we will provide the access to the users in any tenant. When we say that Workday defined contents, right? So we cannot change any Workday delivered item that are in a domain, and we cannot add any new business process type also, which are delivered by Workday. But in a customer defined security group, we can create our own security group via giving a domain security policies, and via constrained or unconstrained security roles, we can create our security group and we can provide the access to the particular users. Okay. And also we can create our custom business process. Let's say for certain transactions, we don't want to use the Workday delivered business process, but we will have our own workflow steps. We will have our different security groups that will be defined for a business process. So we can create that, and via the security groups we can define a business process type, and then we can also create our custom security groups for our customer defined tenant, customer owned tenant. So what does the configurable security provides? So these configures access to a secureable item by adding any security group to a domain security policy. So always, again, this domain which consists of a secureable items, right? Via the domain security group policy, we configure the security groups, and also we configure access to workflow steps for any business process security policies. We define, we configure the access for a workflow trigger to a different security groups. And also we create our own security groups. Okay. This is how we configure in a security groups. So this one again, we discussed, right? What is configurable security? What you cannot change the work delivered items that are in a domain, and you cannot add any new business process type which are delivered by Workday.
From a security standpoint, like if you are a security person, right, what all can you do? Like if someone tells you, okay, Sunil's team member are security configurators or security admins, or Sunil is having access of security, Raj is having security access. So what does it mean high level? It means that you can add certain additional things to existing security groups. What you can do is, for example, there is some security group which is absence admin, time admin, HR partner, benefits partner, report writer, those kind of things. And you want to provide certain additional accesses to them or remove certain accesses. So any deviations which you can do is what you can do from your end. So as a security person, you can go to the security group, change those, certain, I would say, accesses and update that. Also, in general, if you see business process security flow, business process, you can modify a business process that this person is approving, this person is not approving, this person can view certain things. But business process, ideally in the real world, the ownership lies on the functional person who is taking care of that module and driving that. For example, if it's HCM functional would be driving absence, time tracking, those business areas. That person knows it better, who's the functional person, and that person updates the business process. Okay. But if you have security access, you can do that. And finally, it is creating a security group. This is one of the, I would say, from a probability perspective, in any organization, you won't find someone reaching out on a frequent basis that we need to create a security group. The only reason where the frequency of creation of security group would be comparatively higher would be where you have recently established Workday in your organization, you have recently implemented Workday, or you are going live with a new module. That is the only case. Or you are going live with a new geography. For example, your company is expanding somewhere else, or you are acquiring some organization, those kind of things. That's where you might have to create certain security groups which can be specific to that location or that country, right? Otherwise, in most of the general cases, the effort required on a security side is just to modify, either remove or add existing securities. And the one biggest thing, obviously, which you have already told is a pain point, right? That as an integration person or as someone who's working on Workday, and if you are running a report, if you are accessing something and you are unable to do that, how do you do that, right? Those are the things which you handle on a day-to-day frequent basis, and we'll try to cover these things, right? That is the primary thing. From your perspective, I totally understand. From a driving perspective, ideally you should have a high level knowledge of everything, but then the focus should be how do we troubleshoot, because troubleshooting is the key part. At the end, that is problem solving, right, which we want to do.
Okay.
Cool. So
Right.
not taking a lot of time. Yeah, obviously this is something which is pretty straightforward. You cannot change what is delivered in the domain, right? Within domain, for example, absence domain, time tracking domain, Workday provides certain capabilities. Obviously, we cannot modify those. We can obviously update them to view and edit, but you don't have to do anything. You cannot add your own domain to drive something, or you cannot add your business process. Workday defines certain business processes within that module only, and we can play with them only. But within the business process, we can do anything. For example, someone requesting a time off, we can tell them to, update a questionnaire as well. We can go tell them to, we can schedule integration as well, right? Anything can be done there, right? Studio integrations typically we fire from a business process, right? Those kind of things. So obviously that area is there where we can be very, I would say, experimental, but obviously Workday has certain limitations which are obviously known to you and me.
Okay.
Now this is a good slide, and which we'll talk in detail. And if you have any questions, like feel free. Like I don't like, one of the things, Sunil, is I have a passion of doing things, not just money. I want to discuss, and I like to make sure I'm providing value in every conversation, because I appreciate you giving time and I appreciate my time as well, right? So we'll keep it very open. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Don't worry about anything. Yeah.
Okay.
So every item in Workday is secured within a security policy. What it is telling is, for example, any field, anything is under a security policy. The access is technically a secured item, and a user. So imagine a connection between the gym and someone waiting outside the gym. If I am standing in front of the gym is having different accesses. Gym is having different treadmills, machines, swimming pools, spa center, whatever. Those are different secured items. Okay, different floors are there: first floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor. First floor is having normal gym, second floor is having something, third is something, fourth is something.
Right.
The connection between me and the gym is the access card, the registration which I do, and that is security group. So if I'm taking just a membership, which is just the basic one, I get access only to the gym.
Right.
But if I want to go and access spa center in the gym or something else, that's where my security group either has to be updated or my existing one has to be updated. Let me give you an example, real world. You have security membership, let's say $100 per month, right? There is 100, 200, 300, 400. Okay. If you have $100 access per month, they are giving you limited access. Now you're going to them and telling, okay, I want these additional things as well. So what gym guy will tell is, sir, you have to update your membership to $200. Then only you can access the other things. So what I am telling you is, if you want to access certain additional things, you have to update or you have to get additional security access. And by additional security access is additional security group. And if I am, let's say, if I am just saying, okay, I don't want to spend extra money, give me for the time being, give me 1 week of trial. I don't want to go to $200 right now. Okay. I just want it during the test cycle, during the integration implementation, during the real world scenario. I'm telling, I just need it for 1 week. After that, you revoke my access. I don't want to pay $200. I want to pay $100 only. But for the time being, give me one week's access only, please. So what it is Raj testing in integration, Sunil testing in integration, Sunil testing some application, and we want certain access for a limited time only. For example, I'm adding a new report, adding new integration, and I'm not a person who should have access to payroll information, compensation information, but for the project, I'm sending the information of compensation and payroll to an external vendor, ADP, right? And for the time being, I need to have access to ensure the integration is picking up that value via custom report or via a core connector, via an integration, whatever, correct? So I just want to ensure that data is getting picked up, the real-time data is getting picked up, and it is moving forward. So what I'm telling my security person is, in my organization is, don't give me extra access for the time being, just give me limited access to that specific area. So what the security person will do is, he will check, okay, Raj is having this security, I'll update his security group and add one more access, one more domain within that existing security group, and update the security group. So what I'm telling you is, the $100 access which you have is, I'm giving you extra 1 week access, try that, and then it will be revoked. After 1 week, you won't have the access. So for 1 week, I'm giving you extra domains within your existing security group. Okay.
Right.
So there are two ways of giving the access, obviously. One is, either I give you full-fledged new access altogether, new security group. Okay. And then you have unlimited access, you have extra access. The other case would be modify existing one and add certain things. And after the project, either, update it back to normal or keep it same. Similar ways for business process as well, we can do that. So business process security is straightforward. And if I compare it in comparison to usual security, business process is very straightforward. It is a cakewalk. If you understand that one, business process, it should not take more than an hour for you to understand. So for business process as well, it is exactly the same. You being an absence administrator, you should have access to absence business processes. Now, if I tell you, okay, you should have access to compensation and payroll business processes as well, because you are testing something. You are checking certain things. You are entering time on behalf of employee to check if your integration is picking up that value and sending it further to the payroll processing. Okay. So here as well, same thing. Either they give you new security group altogether, which is absence admin or time tracking admin, or modify your existing one. So if you see, to determine whether a user is allowed to run a given task, you have to look at certain things. And this is very complex technically. What I can tell you in simple words is, that on your behalf, what all security you have. And that you don't have certain security groups as well. That. So to identify that, what exactly you don't have, the straightforward answer is, don't worry about this slide. What we can do is, just look at the next one. This is again, everything is secured within a domain. Everything is secured within business process. You don't have to worry. View security for securable item.
Okay.
This is, I would say, I don't know, from an analogy perspective, this is, I would say, paracetamol of all diseases. In any case, you will have to run this one. For example, you don't have access to, certain, for example, time entry, any task or anything, any item. You just run this report and enter the name of item. It will show you where exactly it is being secured. And let me give you probably an example. Let me stop screen sharing and probably look at the tenant if it's available. I'll tell you, this is, I would say, the paracetamol of all the diseases. It will show you certain things. For example, you want to know, what data source it is being secured. And I'll go through it one by one. This is an important one. Probably this is more important than the slides. So let me talk about it in detail. So what I've entered is very straightforward. I entered time off. I don't know time off, like I should have access to certain report fields. I'm running those report fields, but sadly, those report fields are coming up as blank. I don't know what is the problem. I want to ensure that report is picking up the values. So report fields are there. But before that, if you want to do certain transactions, right, with respect to this time off, right, there are certain tasks. If you see, enter time off, which is enabled as a web service as well, normal time off balances, these all are secured under certain functional areas. If you see, it is showing up under certain functional areas. Some of them are, very specific to implementation functional areas, and you don't have to remember. For example, tenant non-configurable, this we cannot change. Obviously, we just can give access, but most likely this would be available for everyone. And I'll show you one example. So this is something which is primarily on the core side of things. And let me open it in a separate tab. So functional areas are nothing but based on certain business logic. They try and link certain things. Okay. So this one, ideally the implementation functional area, even though it is involved to multiple things, it includes multiple domains. If you see iloads, object transporters, these are, I don't know if you have used previously object transporters. So while migration, right, if you want to migrate from one tenant to different tenant, you can migrate functional configuration or reports using aux, right? So these are the core financial or core module wise basic things which are primarily given by workday only. So the purpose of this functional area is not driven towards the business logic. This is more towards the foundational things. It is as simple as or as close as edit tenant setup is there, right? The key setup things are available. So in this one, if you see this functional area, obviously let me open this one so that it will be easier. So this functional area is having these all certain things. If you see, iload, object transporter, these kind of things are there. And there are certain security provided to certain people. Migration admin is having ability to migrate certain things as view and modify. So you define all this here. This would be primarily used for the foundational functional work. You don't have to worry. You have to identify that what do you need from this perspective. For example, you are running an integration and you want to have access to request time off. So let me find the appropriate thing which is request time off. So espresso is espresso report. I don't need that. I'm finding a task which is, so it is saying, review time of request time off. This seems like a good one. So most of the tasks, so let me show you that. Yeah. So there are multiple. So every transaction, if you see whatever is in your profile, right? Technically, it's a report. Espresso report is nothing but workday delivered reports.
Okay.
You know what? And if they want to display something, they will show you in espresso reports. Simple as that. So if you see here, request time of security, it is kind of defined at the business process security level. Request time off is defined within this functional area for employee as self. So whoever was the functional person, what functional person did was in the business process, they defined whoever is an employee can request time off, but you would be able to request time off only as capacity of yourself. So this is one. And in between, if you see this one, you have certain additional things as well. And let me show you this one. So any field which is, for example, you are picking up certain field for your integration or report, whatever. You want to find, okay, why I don't have access to that. And that is one of the things which every integration person reaches out, and they are, because they have work on multiple functional modules altogether and they are not experts. Right. And they have to either reach out to someone else or they have to wait for certain time to the functional person to respond or the security person to respond. For you, if you have very basic knowledge of this one only, you can tell them right away that, okay, I don't have time of completed details. This field I don't have access. This is secured where in this functional area, please give me access. If you compare that in the report, only you are able to see your data and not anyone else. That means it is a security issue. So as a I would say thumb rule, and this is not told by Workday. If you go to a Workday trainer, they will tell you, no, there is no way, or there is no right way of doing it, right? But as a thumb rule, if I tell you from a work perspective, right, from the projects which I've been working on from quite some time, we all have faced these kind of issues. If I'm a functional person as well, I'm working on certain module, I don't get access of certain fields. What immediately I will do is find that field name, ensure that I'm getting blank. For most of the people, it's not the data issue, it is the security issue. It is telling me related business object, which you are aware of in the, while creating reports, you are aware that the key thing is it is secured under this functional area. So I'll click on this one, view security, and this will show me certain things. It is having security policy. If you see here, who all have access to this one, these all people technically, and this is very logical. If you see, whoever is having a role, elevated role as HR or as someone, will have access to this. An absence admin ideally should have, HR person should have. If you want to have this one, then you can get that. But this will tell you, okay, these people, you can tell your functional guy, you can tell your security guy, whoever is actually working in the system day-to-day basis, whatever, right? Whatever works from your perspective. If you see, while you have logged in as yourself and you are getting your data and not anyone else in the world, that means it is a security issue, number one. Then we have to ensure that, it is security issue, number one. In terms of troubleshooting, number one, what you will do is look at view security for secureable item. And secureable item includes everything possible. The only thing or the only smart thing which you have to think is, how do you find the exact word? If it is a field, then you just copy paste the field and it will give you the exact name. But
Right,
if
but
you don't have clarity, then you have to think about it. Most of the cases, you ideally know that this field is not working, this field is blank. How do I verify my integration is working fine? The
Right.
second case would be, you being an integration person might have to do certain transactional activities. Now, transactional activities ideally fall under business processes. For example, what they're telling is, okay, we don't have someone to create test data for you. We don't have someone to help you. We have to, kind of tell you that you have to create your data, ensure the integration is picking up that data and running. Now you will tell, I don't have access to request time off. I don't have access to request time off for anyone, enter time off for anyone, approve time off for anyone. Simple as that. You find out that security, look at that security and get it updated either on the business process side, which would be most likely case in case of transactions. So certain tasks are also there which are secured. And let me probably show you certain things. So if you see views domain security policy, right? This is having certain securable actions, certain reporting items. Just click on this one. This again gives you certain perspective. If you see that these all, let me show it to you. These all fields are there, which are there within this one. And you want to get, time off without statuses. You want this report field. Now what you have to tell is, get me access of this one. That's it. Get me access of worker data, time off. If you get me that, then I'll be able to look at this reporting item. So these are the tasks which are there. For example, someone told you, probably, let's look at certain things. Let me give you an example. Yeah. You want to have, someone is telling whatever is the comment, right, being added in the time off, we have to delete all those in the transaction, right? There is a capability, for example, there is a task associated. Okay.
Right.
By inherent nature of any task means what? To modify, correct? You initiate any action. If you see, any task is technically modify always, because if you get an access to task, that means you have access to perform that task. Clear? Task is inherently actionable. So you have been told, okay, we want to create some integration event where we can delete the time of comments, because we want, certain type of leaves are there, like medical leaves and abortion leaves. We don't want any additional information in the system because it is very sensitive. Okay. So we have to create a certain integration event and we want to delete time off. Okay. But the task access is not there for you. That's where, you are trying to find it out. And let me copy this one. That is where you can be very smart in terms of finding the right word. I'm just giving you one example. If you have very specific information, it will narrow it down immediately. If you see, it tells you immediately that, okay, this task is only secure to one area and it will take us to the same place, which we just looked, right? Security is something, if you understand it, it is a cakewalk. If you don't understand it, it's a really messy thing. If you don't have access to a security group, either there are two ways of doing it. The example which I gave, either get an elevated access, $200 access, where you get extra security group, so that you don't have to worry too much about it. They will automatically update your security group and they won't have to worry about domains and whatnot. Other thing is $100 only and limited access. They have to modify the domain policy and update it for the time being. Usually, if you are an implementation tenant, test tenant, Sunil, most of the cases, what we do is, to save time from an operational perspective, what people do is create certain security groups which have everything possible. Say super users, right? They have everything from an end-to-end perspective. Or certain security groups which have extra access. People do smartly is, you can tell them. And so, for example, time off is there, right? Certain field is there in time off. Most likely you are aware, okay, there could be two ways of doing it. Let me give you an example. You are creating an integration which is having a field called time of comments by user. Very straightforward integration, just picking up the balances, sending it to external vendor for payroll processing. Okay, very straightforward custom report, EIB, outbound EIB, simple as that. That field access you don't have. You are running it for everyone possible in this organization. That field is blank, everything else is coming up. Worker information is there, manager information is there, time of balances is there, anything else is there, but that field is not there. There are two ways of approaching this. One is view security for securable item, enter time of comments, find out which all security, which specific area the security is not there, view domain, and tell it to your security person to update that, or in future you will be able to do that. That is one, which is the hard way of updating the $100 access for the time being. The other way is in the implementation tenant, time off is something where an absence admin would have everything possible.
Okay.
Absence admin ideally is a super user where everything related to time off he or she should have. What you can do simply is give yourself absence admin security group, and that's it. Automatically you are getting that specific domain indirectly. So step one, you go to view security of securable item, you see that domain, you identify, okay, your security group is not there. But while you are looking at it, you see absence admin is there. So why to modify my security group? Just add absence admin to myself, and that's it. In implementation tenant, you can do it very smartly and tell that, while testing, you can do that. So in terms of real world, that is one of the ways how people do it, because sometimes these can be very confusing. So the best way usually what people prefer is try to give an elevated access and get that sorted immediately rather than, updating security, activate pending security policies and all those things, right? So much of effort. So, but you should know that where exactly it is being stuck, right? So two ways of doing it, first one and second one. In no Workday book, it will tell you to do like that, but real world scenario, this is the way of doing it. And this, if you don't have access to that, ideally you should have, your payroll person, security person to tell you. But let me probably think of one way of doing it. Let me check if that content, I don't want to confuse you with too much of information as well. View security groups for user is one of the reports. With this report, if you have access to, this will show you your access as well as others' access. But to access to this one as well is secured somewhere else. So that is the, kind of what do we call a loop in a way. You should have access to basic level of security to troubleshoot security. So one way of doing it is, if it's very basic, tell your security person, tell me what all security groups I have, or do I have this access or not. At least you should have two accesses for troubleshooting anything in security. One is view security for securable item. You should have at least that to troubleshoot. The second thing is view security groups for user. If you have these two, then you have the combination of the best things in the world. So you have the right things, right tools to look at the security. But if you don't have access to these two as well, then it is impossible, because you have access as an end user technically. Because for example, if someone is using the company where you are working, normal employees are there, right, who work in the business function, they don't have access to all this, right? They don't know Workday, they don't know view security, they don't know anything, correct? But for you in future, one of the recommendations would be, wherever you are working, at least ensure you get these two accesses. Because one of the smart things you can do is create a security group called integration super user, give everything possible, keep it with your security person, tell the security person, wherever I need some troubleshooting, give me this security group for the time being, right? Real world scenario. Because in production, obviously you'll have limited access. Production, you'll have very limited accesses to, initiate certain integrations, unable to modify, environment would be restricted. You can look at process monitor only, you cannot download certain things. But in implementation, you can do certain things.
Okay, for any domain, you can go to view domain, and then you can look into the what kind of permission in that domain is consist of, whether it has a view only access or whether it has a modify access. Okay, and the domain which has view only access, the user can go and then only view those tasks. Okay, the user will not have any access to maintain that. For example, let's say for any employee, right? Employee have access to view their compensation detail. Okay. So as an employee, if I can log into Workday, I have view access to my compensation detail, but I will not have any modified access to the compensation area because of the security access. Okay. And if we have the modify access, so if any domain which consists of a modify permission, means by default it will have the view access as well as the modify. Like as a time administrator, if somebody is going, entering time on behalf of any employee, okay, they will have the view. They have the view access to view their time sheet, as well as they have the modify access, like they will enter on behalf of any employee. That is how the security is designed based on the domain, the view based on view access and the modify access. In that, what do we see in the view security for secureable item? So you can view any kind of security groups, which has it will give you a more detailed version of what is the functional area it belongs to, what are the domains, and inside that, what are the subdomains, and how the domain and subdomain are, given a permission. Again, the view access or the modify access. Okay. And also the child and parent relationship with the domain and the subdomain, right? We have seen one domain which has below that we also have the view of the subdomain. To a domain, if you are giving access to a parent domain, so domain is called as a parent domain. If you are giving the modify access to the parent domain, right? The same access, the child domain, this subdomain is called a child domain. This subdomain also will have the same access. Okay. But if you wanted to override that, let's say on the main domain you have modify, but in the child domain you wanted to give certain child domain is nothing but out of the main domain you have one of the activity is called as a child domain. Okay, so for child domain you wanted to give a different permission, then also you have a options to override the parent permission. So in Workday, if you can go to the view domain, you will have all the options to view. Let's say in this slide, right, if you can. So if we can see here, set of financial accounting. So this is the domain, the financial accounting. Under that, we have all the accounting tools, custom categories, fiscal schedule, journal source. So these are the subdomain inside it, okay? And when you see the domain security policy, the accounting rules, right? The status is active, inherit, parent permission, okay? So
Okay.
whatever the permission, the parent domain, means the main domain has, all the subdomain also will inherit the same permission.
Okay.
But you wanted to, let's say out of this subdomain, right? If you wanted to give any specific child domain with a different permission than the main domain, then there is a option of override parent permission. So for override parent permission, it will override the parent, and then you can select the domain, which subdomain you wanted to override, and then you can just modify based on, you can provide the permission, whether the view or modify to that child domain, subdomain. And also you can see here, right, integration permission, right? For any domain, we'll have the domain security policy. So for integration, especially for security group, which security group will have this integration permission, whether it is get or put. So this anything related to integration also, you can provide the permission to a particular domain. And then we have the business process security policy. So any business process, we can view any kind of business process, let's say hire, termination, change job. These are the different kind of business process, right? Which has the different set of actions that need to be performed based on the business process steps. Okay. So any business process, it has the initiation task, who which security group will have the access to initiate the business process, who all the security group who has the view access to the business process, or who can approve it, okay, and who can cancel. So approve, cancel, rescind, these are all actions related to the business process, right? Let's say, for example, termination action, termination business process, right? For termination business process, which security group can initiate the, who can perform the termination action for any employee? So ideally, in any of the organization, we provide this access to the talent service or the core HR data management team who just perform a transactional data in Workday, right? So we define the security and then we provide, based on this business process security policy, we provide certain kind of access to that. So you can say that, okay, all these actions we can give to one security group, right? So in the real time, ideally, it is not that. So in a real time scenario, we'll have, let's say, whenever the talent service team initiate the termination action, right, it has to go to the manager for approval or any kind of HRBP, so for approval, right? So these kind of actions that need to be, given to this certain security group. So we can define based all this stuff, all this, actions for any business process based on this business process security policy. And so this is all about here for business process, right? One of the create expense report. Okay, so if you can see here for this, who can start the business process? Okay. And we also have the security group defined for that, who can start the business process. Let's say for create expense report. So create expense report, ideally as an employee, I wanted to go and then I will create my expense report and submit it, right? So the employee security group, employee itself, will have the access to the expense report. So we provide the employee itself. And contingent worker itself. So for employee and for contingent worker, right, it is completely two different security groups, because always the, in certain scenario, for employee will be treated very differently than the contingent worker, because contingent worker will not have much benefit applicable in any organization, right, depending on their contract. So wherever there is a contingent worker are applicable for any of these tasks, right, we need to define the security group for even for the contingent worker. Okay. And security group who can delegate this action to others. Delegation means, the delegation concept, right? If I wanted to delegate certain access to during in my absence, if I want to delegate something to one of my peer or one of my manager, then even I can do that, right? I can do that action related. So this here we can also define who can delegate this. Initiating action, again, create expense report for pre-hire or for applicant, who are the security group who can initiate the actions. So based on this security, they can initiating the action. Again, submit the expense report. Okay, who are the security group who can submit the expense report? If you can see here, for each of the business process, right, we are defining, initiating, who can submit it, who can approve, and below that here we don't have the screenshot, but if you can view any of the business process policy, right, even you can also see that for approve, for rescind, for canceling the transaction, who are the security group who have the access. So we define based on each action for any kind of business process. First, you can visit the business process. Okay, for example, hire. Okay, if you can go to the business process for hire, right, we have the hire default definition, which is the normal Or else if they have created, let's say, higher stakeholder or higher employee as a business process, right? They copy the standard one and then they create their own custom business process. Okay. So first the business process. You can go to the business process over here. And then here we have so many actions, right? This is a related action. You can go and then you can view here. So we have these are first business process. Here you can edit the definition, maintain a help text, all the rule based, everything. Okay. The business process policy. Okay.
Right.
So this is the business process policy where you can go and view the business process policy. And then when you get into the business process policy, right, then here you have the functional area. So this higher business process comes under the staffing functional area. So normally nobody will buy hat or how many functional areas which stars come to any functional area. So here in this way, you can first identify, okay, this is my functional area, staffing, and then who can start the business process. So here you wanted to give access, that you don't have the access to hire any employee, right? So here by looking into the business process security policy, under each of this action, you will be able to understand, okay, so I'm missing with this. I doesn't belong to one of these security group, and hence I cannot perform the hire action. Okay, for any employee. Like in initiating action, you have to convert to employee consent worker. Again, security group who can delegate this action to others. Here we have defined the managers. So initiating action, hire employee. So this is the one which you are looking into.
Right.
Hire an employee directly from their employee agreement. So these security groups, if you can see, only these are the security groups who have the access to hire employee transaction. You can go to any of these security group and then you can add, you want to do X, you can modify the security group and then you can add, or else you can create a one and then you can just add it under the security groups.
Okay.
And then you will be able to access. And security group who can delegate this action to others. Ideally here it is defined as a manager, so manager can do that. So this delegation, any kind of delegate functionalities are applicable for manager, because manager, when they are on leave or for a short-term or long-term, there will be a lot of approvals, right? Let's say I have submitted an expense report and my manager need to approve. So if the manager is on leave, then the manager will delegate to another manager, which the acting manager will approve on behalf of this manager. So that is the reason this delegated action is also important for the managers. They will have the access. Okay. And even we have mass hire employee, initiating actions, right? All this security group defined. You can just go define the security groups. Who can do action step in the business process? Okay. So action step means, again, in the business process also, we have a review employee hire, verify proposed employee ID. So each of the actions, which security group can perform that, okay? So we also defined, based on each action, we also provide this defined the security group access. Who can do actions on the entire business process? Okay, let's say you don't want to provide on each action stepwise, but you wanted to provide on the entire business process. So here is the area which have the view all access for the entire business process. Let's say if any of these security group, right, if you are part of some security group which is not listed here, then you will not have even the view access for that business process. Right. If you can see here, we don't have employee itself, or a normal employee will not have access to view the business process. So we can see it is not listed here. So as an employee, when the employee log into the system, they cannot search any kind of business process. View completed only. So when the business process is employee itself, so any kind of actions which is completed, then the employee will have access to view that. Okay. Like employee can, as I said, they can go and view their actions, like their business process, what are the step it has been approved. an employee will have access. So those you can define. And for approve, for ad hoc approve, for canceling the web service, you all defined based on this. You can see the manual advance, deny web service, redirect. So all this you defined based on your business process security policy. So you can play around like that. You can play around if you don't know any functional area or anything, any domain also, if you don't know, if you doesn't have much detail about that, you can just directly go to the business process and then you can drill down business process security policy, right, which we have discussed now. Okay, so here we are completed with our first module, which has the very basic information about the security, about the domain, security for view security for securable item, and then how you can drill down for all the action, how you can see what are the defined, how the security groups are defined. Okay, and then the child and parent security policy inheritance versus the override. How can we view that? So here we are completed with this. Now we can get into the lab activity, right? So the lab activity, I want you to just access this transaction, okay? And then you can, so that at least you will have some idea how can you view any security and how can you view the, how can you run this report in the Workday tenant. Let's see. So here one of the lab activity as sign in as Logan McNeil. For the community access, we always log in as a Logan McNeil. Okay. And first here, let's now see how Jeff Gordon and Noah Pierce as a user were able to access the items stored in the previous demonstration via security groups. Okay. So this is the business case where you will act as a security administrator. So first main thing is what in security, whatever the report we are checking, that view security for securable item, view domain, functional areas, so all the access will be falls under the security administrator. Okay. If you do not have the very minimum security access, even you cannot perform this transaction in your Workday tenant. So ideally, and any organization, okay, especially for the security administrator, so there will be two kind of security administrator and the security configurator. Okay, they will define the security like groups based on the functional areas. They define the security for certain group of people, or else not everybody, not all the Workday consultant by default will have the security access. Because security is the very key factor for Workday. You can play around. Whoever has the access, they can play around anything in Workday tenant, right? They can change any kind of business process. They can provide the access to certain group of people. They can do anything in the tenant. So that is the reason ideally this access will be given to very few people. But if you have the security administrator access, at least you can view all this transaction report. Like you have access to your organization, right? Workday tenant, you have access. So are you able to perform, at least search these kind of reports in your Workday tenant, Sunil? Then you can just type in the Workday account. Workday account is nothing but any user ID. Okay. And then you can see what are the security groups this Workday account has access to. And here it is a detailed view, right? For report, what are the report modify access, and this security Workday account has, okay, and report for view access, and report and task for put access. So similarly for the business process type, also business process for initiating and for approve, for view access. So everything that this report is very useful if you wanted to sometime to troubleshoot for any of the Workday account. If you for any of the user, you wanted to see, the user ID, and you wanted to understand the security group, what kind of access this user has, then this is the report that is very beneficial when you wanted to troubleshoot any issues. So what is the security profile. What do you mean by the security profile? Okay. Why this comes always? These are options to. Okay, so let it be. So what do you mean by the security profile? So ideally for any user security access, right, is a union of permission across all user security group. So again, each security group has different permission to multiple security policy. Let's say we view into any security group, right? Inside that we have domain, subdomain, each security group has. So how you define the security, permission based on the view permission or get permission, view or modify permission, and what are the method for each security group that we have. Okay. Workday delivered, which are automatically assigned. So when we hire any employee, right, based on your certain transactions, based on the actions, there will be automatically, these are the securities groups which will be assigned to the worker. So for example, that all employee itself, but all contingent worker. So based on the worker type, so this will be automatically assigned, this some security group will be automatically assigned to the employee. So this these are the Workday delivered security groups. Okay. And let's say for the contingent worker, right? Again, based on the contingent worker type. So the for contingent worker and for employee, the employee type is the key factor, right? Which define whether it is a employee or it's a contingent worker. So again, for the based on the employee type, these are the security group which will be automatically assigned, and ideally these automatically assigned security groups are the Workday delivered security groups. Okay. And the second one we have tenanted, like in our Workday tenant, manually assigned one. Okay. So based on our employee, based on a certain team and based on our requirement, we manually assign certain security groups to a certain group of people. Let's say I am working as a Workday consultant, right? We will have, I will have the implementer access, so that I can do any kind of Workday development job, implementation of any of the HCM module or any of the finance module, that I will be assigned to that. So these are the manually assigned securities based defined, like you can just go to any user and then you can manually assign the security groups to any kind of users to provide that specific security access. Okay, like we have the report writer. So ideally, in any organization, if you have a reporting team, there will be for every organization, they keep as a reporting team as a separate team. Okay, so anything, any reporting requirement in Workday, irrespective of any kind of module, let's say whether it is finance or HCM, or let's say absence, within HCM, we have payroll, we have time, absence, compensation, right? Irrespective of any of these reporting requirement, this reporting team will be responsible to set up any kind of reporting requirement, to define any kind of reports in Workday tenant. So you provide the access as a report writer access to those employees, right? So these are the way that you, again, in your Workday tenant, let's say we have an implementation tenant, then we have the production tenant. So again, each of these tenant, we manually assign to any users based on our requirement, based on the team. Let's say we have a payroll system or the integration system, we have a finance administrator. So based on this security group, we just manually assign to any employee. Okay. And another is tenanted membership derived based on the security group criteria. Okay. So ideally, these are the role-based security groups. Okay. So HR partner, or our we have the location-based HR business partner, or the talent service, which are defined as a role-based security groups. Okay, so whenever any employee will be hired on a particular role, then these security groups will be automatically assigned based on the membership criteria that is defined in the security group. So these are the different type of method in Workday tenant, which are automatically assigned, which are manually assigned, and then the role based on your particular role, the defined security group will be assigned to the employees. Again, the Workday delivered security group, right, which we have discussed, like when a new Workday account is created for a newly hired employee, Workday assigns self-service or the employee itself or all employee security groups. Okay, so this will give the user access to perform all kind of self-service related tasks. Okay, so these are what we discussed. Again, this slide talks about the same thing. And web public, like these are the all termini or all retiree, project manager, constant worker. Okay, these are also all the Workday delivered securities. Okay, and self-service means ideally we have employee as self, constant worker as a self, or the customer contract itself. So anything that is itself also, these are also Workday delivered security groups, which will be automatically assigned to the employees based on this criteria. Okay, and we have implementer access, let's say, which we normally, any kind of Workday consultant provide, or the Workday partners, they will have the implementer access to the Workday tenant. So these are also different kind of securities that is defined. Workday delivered securities, right? Initiator or manager's manager, role maintainer. These are also a Workday delivered security groups. So again, I think we have already discussed this thing. I will also again tell you the same thing. Report for viewing and security. So these are the reports which you can access in your Workday tenant in order to understand what the user have particular access, or which domain you wanted to drill down, you want to troubleshoot any of this issue. So these reports, these Workday delivered reports will help you to understand the user security access. Let's say for the view security group for user, okay, let's say you wanted to view your security access. What are the security groups that you have the access to? Then you can access this, and then you can provide your employee like Workday account, and then you can see what are the security groups you have the access to. You can go to any worker, and then from the related action also you can get into the view security group for user. You can access that, and then you can view. It will list down all the security groups, okay, which security groups the employee has access to. This is the first very Workday delivered report. Right. Security analysis for Workday account. This is the just now we have gone through, right? The security analysis for Workday account report. So it provides a view of user access given all this security group permission, whether the employee has the reporting access, view access, modify access. So complete list this for any kind of Workday account. Yes, Sunil? Okay, so first two, it will tell you only the security group access. I just wanted to know that I have what kind of security group access. Let's say report writer access, or the implementer access, or the employee as a self access. Okay, here you can just view only only the security groups. You don't see anything else in that. Okay, only it will list down all the security group that a user is assigned to. Okay, but the second report is, it will list down first the Workday account, the user, and then it will list down the security group. And in that security group, if you have seen that, we have under reports also, what are the report that user have access to, whether the view access or modify access, or for that functional area, whether if it has the business process, view, approve, deny access. So it will give you a complete security analysis of a user access. Okay. So this is the difference between these two reports. And view security group, again, you wanted to view any security group detail, you just go to the view security group, just mention the security group, and then you will see the domain, the functional area. You can also see the business process, the security policy, and what kind of security permission you have, the access has that particular security group. Okay. And action summary for security group. So this is list all the domain and the business process security policy that security group has permission, and detail about each of the security policy. So this is also one of the Workday delivered report. You will be able to, you can just access. So once you are done with your lab activity, right? I think in this lab activity also you will have, there will be certain assignment which they will ask you to enter, and you can view that. You can access in your tenant, and then you can see in detail. View security for securitable item. So here it again, it shows all the domain and the business process security policy provides, and what is the securitable item for that. Let's say for security, right, report writer security. Okay, what are the, for the report writer security, what are the securitable items, the create a report, run report, or any different kind of task level, right? Again, defined. So based on the task level, based on what are the securitable items under that security group has. So you can also view this report for it, if you want to understand it, detailed security or domain related to that security. So these are all the delivered report or the delivered report. You can just access, and then you can view that. Self-service access constraint. Okay, constraint access means you will be able to view a specific constraint data. Okay, let's say if they have given location is constraint, right? So only on the different role-based location, let's say in the location, if I am defining office location as a Bangalore or Mumbai, so any group that fall in under this location, only they will have the access to. Okay, so, and also it is like constraint, it can be region, it can be country, or the location based. So anything you wanted to define it different, only specific constraint security, then that is only the user will have access only to view that constraint area, the task that is security group is defined to. But unconstrained access means it will just provide complete access. So star proxy means what? It will have access. They can proxy any user. They can view anything. Okay. Again, so proxy, if you have unconstrained proxy access, then you can just proxy any user in the organization. Like whether it is a from India or from US or from any region or for any location, but certain organization, right, they provide a constrained proxy access. Let's say my the APAC HR team will have proxy access only for the APAC region only. So that time they provide proxy access for a constraint based on the region. Okay, then they can proxy any employee who falls under the APAC region. Only they will be able to proxy. They cannot proxy anything, any employee outside of APAC region. Let's say for US or for EMEA, they cannot proxy any employee. They can just go and view access, but they will not be able to proxy. So these are the difference between your constrained and unconstrained security access. Now, domain security policy for functional area. You wanted to core payroll as a domain. If you wanted to, so this is a sort of functional area, and you wanted to view what this domain security policy is all about. Let's say for the self-service payroll, right? Under the self-service payroll, you have self-service payroll for MyPay and different tasks related, right? So for my payment election, means it's nothing but I can define my bank detail. Okay, so this falls under the expense and also payroll, because we defined our bank detail and what kind of expense, whether it is a company expense or the personal expense. Also, we also define that. So based on allow security group types, so we are providing access to the pre-worker and also a worker. You can see what are the securitable actions. So when you again drill down to this, inside this, then you will be saying what are the securable actions that this my payment election domain policy consists of. So in that way, you can have the view access about any kind of domain. Also, you have the, if you wanted to edit the permission, you wanted to add, apart from these two security group, you want to define any other security groups, then you can go to the edit permission and then you can add those security groups. Okay, so let's say paid not payroll interface, worker data payroll. Okay, if you can go to the worker data payroll, see the functional area first, as you can see here, payroll, and then you can see what is the domain security policy. Okay, and under this count the secure items. Okay, these are 62, but if you go inside to the domain security policy, here you will be able to see what are the securable actions. So here, when you just give your cursor on that, it will take you inside what are the secure tasks. Okay, the input, let's say add payroll input by worker, delete a payroll input, or payroll input or not processed. So these are all the task based and also the report based, right? So each of these you defined each of the task level, whether it will have the modify permission or the view permission or the get permission. We defined based on that. And the implementer, initiator, manager, these are also few of the Workday delivered security groups. And we discussed about the reports which we can use for to view in detail about the what kind of access this security group has. We can also have the ability to view the domain business process security policy, even the task level, we can view the detail, and view security for secureable items and security analysis for Workday account. So these reports, which it will help you to look into the worker, what kind of security or in the task level, how the security is defined for a particular user. And there are also, we also discussed about the constrained, restriction, unconstrained security, which are like, if it is unconstrained, then directly the user will be having the access to the global, like in a broader access wise, the user will be having the unconstrained access to the particular domain. But if it is a constraint, so ideally constrained to the certain area. If you're constraining based on the region, location, or a particular segment or a particular group, if we wanted to make it as a constraint, then also we can define the constraint security groups. Okay, and about this policy for the permission, right? So for a Workday owned security groups, manually you cannot add or remove manually for any Workday delivered security groups which are automatically assigned to any Workday account. So let's say when we hire any employee, based on the employee type, employee itself will be assigned to the worker. But we will not have the ability to manually go and then remove that. Okay, so Workday doesn't allow to manually add or remove any Workday owned or delivered security group which are automatically assigned based on the criteria. But we will have the ability to change the Workday delivered, Workday owned security groups domain or the business process security. So in the real-time scenario, it is not advisable to make any changes to the Workday delivered security group. So all the security configurator and the security administrator, right, during our implementation, they define the security group based on the different, their requirement. So let's say we have the HR business partner in any of in our organization, right? So ideally, the HR business partner will be based on the locations they define or based on the region they define. So based on that, they create a HR business partner security group, which will have the constrained or unconstrained security access. But if we directly, but we cannot go and deliver HR business partner security group. It is not advisable to make any changes to the delivered workday because it might spoil our tenant. At the end, we will not be able to, restore anything. If you are spoiling any workday owned security group, then even Workday will not support. Like whenever we reach out to Workday, hey, we are having this issue, then even Workday also doesn't support. So ideally, it is better to create our own security groups and define our security based on the different SOX policy, right? SOX regulations in any of the organization. The security is a different area itself where they define based on our GDPR regulations for EMEA or for any organization, they have their own group of people for the security, and then they define for it. They define the security for all the delivered application. So in Workday also we will have they define their own security criteria, and based on that, the security administrator or security configurator, they just go and create the security groups. So here they've mentioned the user right as Logan and a worker Brady. So if I can just go and search. So here we have Brady McCormick. It's pre-hire. Okay. So from the related action, we can just go to the security profile. So as you can see here, we have logged in as a local McNeil, right? And for the pre-hire, the local McNeil has access to security profile, create Workday account. Okay. So while creating the Workday account, first it will ask you to define a username. Okay, anything username you can create. So username they're asked to mention is this PMs. Is there any copy option here? Okay, maybe double C. So our make. Okay, so this username also, like there will be a special automated way of creating a Workday account. Like during the hiring, right, whenever the employee is hired, in the hire business process itself, there will be one step will be triggered, and then that will take them to the create Workday account. And for username also, there will be combination of employee's first name, last name. System will be automatically populate those username. That is, it is not like manually you should create, but in our real-time implementation tenant, those kind of you will be able to view this thing, this kind of usernames which system will auto generate. So here, let me just give me a password as Workday1. Okay, required new password at the next signing. So ideally, whenever we create any user, right, we provide this. So we just provide a normal generic password. So whenever they log into this user ID and password on the first time, then the system will ask you automatically when you say, right, whenever you receive the credentials for the first time, next it will ask you to change your password, right? So system will automatically ask you to change your new. So account disabled. So whenever any, like for any contractor, we create any account, right? We also have the ability to provide the account expiration date. Let's say for the implementer, let's say for any of our project, even the Workday team, they provide certain kind of support access to the organization, right? That time we create, and then we can provide the expiration date, and we can make the account as we can disable the account also. so that they will no longer have access to our Workday tenant. So whenever you run any report, you get the will just have the Workday Excel sheet or worksheets, right? We just download that. So here, even these are hardly we use in our tenant. Okay, and for the exempt from delegated authentication, override delegated authentication for integration system. So you can provide the delegated authentication also. This is also regarding our, very rare scenarios that this kind of delegation authentication option will be used. Okay. And email authentication, yes, this is one of the notification type, right? The email notification. So already the Workday has the notification type of this kind of request time or request absence. So these are, if you can see, the frequency is all muted here. Parent notification type, anniversaries, birthday, general notification, and for notification time off. So you will have the access to daily or immediately. So when the worker has fallen under birthday, right? So for that, there will be immediate notification will be triggered. But there are different ways to, on the anniversary, on the birthday also, to trigger any notification. But here also they have given hardly we use in our real-time scenarios. Okay. And business process for approval, by default it will be mute. Okay, unless until you go and make any changes for to do, for notification tasks, reassign notification, unless until you do any changes, by default it will be mute. Okay. And Cloud Connect for third party payroll, right? For the global payroll assignment. So whenever we have the Cloud Connect for the third party system, right, on the payroll side, so that time this kind of for the third party payroll error, right, whenever we run a payroll, and then there will be a error will be triggered if the job fails. So this kind of notification, how you wanted to trigger. Consider any organization which has 20,000, 30,000 employees. Whenever you create a Workday account, if you maintain all these things, Workday is given this flexibility, but it is not ideally used in our tenant. We just use alerts. We can create different alerts. We can create a notifications for different kind of notification for the request time off, approved time off. So Workday has recreated an alert, and then based on the frequency, we define the frequency, and then the user will receive that. So ideally, it is not defined based on the user level. The error here doesn't meet the requirement for password. Workday 1, 2, 3. It is. Yes. Okay, maybe I'm using Workday, that's why it's not allowing me. Okay, anyway, even though if we create, we cannot log in as this user. From the community, we will not have access. Okay, so if you can see here, for any of the user, we will not, employee will in community tenant will not have the option to proxy. Okay, but at least in your work tenant, right, you can try this. You just go to the user. Okay, so Logan McNeil is the employee here, and then when you go to the security Workday, so security profile, right? Here we will have assigned user base groups. Okay, so assign all the user base directly. You can just assign to any user. So if you can see here, already the Logan Maglin have access to all this kind of user-based security groups, right? So for the report writer, if you want to give it, we know that report writer is the security group, right? So this one you can just make it as report writer, and if you can go to the view the security group, it will have the you will be able to understand whether it is defined for the integration or not. Okay, so right now if we can see here, domain security policy permission, custom report creation, report audit, okay, and worksheet discovery report, view and modify for Workday query language. And so when you go into the domain again, okay, here are the members. That option is not coming here. The integration. Okay, so here, whenever again you get into the domain security policy, right, for the user group, it is defined on the view and modify access for custom report creation. You can again get into the domain security policy, get into the, here if you can see, here it is an unconstrained security group, and the functional area that fall into is systems, okay. So here you will have the secureable action by integration permission. So unless until we will not define this, right, then they will not have access for the integrations. Okay, and under the report and task permission also ISG project time block create, and for the integration like ISU account you create, right, you can add that. You can also define for any kind of integration permission to a security group. Let's say secureable reporting item by integration permission, secureable action item by integration permission. So you can edit the permission for any security group. And when you edit the security group, right, here you will have the access integration permission. So here it will have, you will have access to define again the security group for the integration. So right now, so this is the Workday delivered security group. So I cannot make to this integration, but for any security group that you create, right, based on the domain level, if you want to give the integration permission, it's a separate permission you have to define here. Okay, so here, if you can see here from the integration administrator user-based security group, right, it has all the domain security policy, like they will manage the organization integration event, integration reports, and EIBs. Okay, so for any integration administrator, right, this is the basic thing. This is also one of the EIB, also one of the tasks, right, that they can create a EIB, and then whether the integration, if it is a report based integration, they will via the integration, the schedule via the report, or if they want to go for a PG integration or other type of integration, I'm not sure what are the other areas are there, but depending on that, they will have the integration EIB. So when it is view and modify EIB, then they will be able to create, run any EIB, define any EIB. And setup connections. See, if you have seen here, get input setup connections, transaction request, REST API. So here, this is also API type of integrations, right, where they can define. For core connector, there might be a defined separate domain. It might be restrictive on that. We will have mixed like both security constrained and then the unconstrained using a intersection or a aggregation security group. So we will have the next we will know we will discuss on what is the integration or aggregation security group. But using that, there will be a combination of a mixed security permission also defined to any kind of security groups. Okay, and example of constrained security group. So constrained security group, we will have the self-service security group, which have the constrained member access to their own employee data. So this self-service, like employees, all kind of self-service security groups, those are defined by a constrained security group. Okay, and role-based group also, those also can be defined as a constraint. So for any employee, if you are defining any security based on the role, right? Let's say for the HR administrator or HR business partner, if we are defining the role based, so based on that, role based security group also can be defined as a constrained security group. And the segment based security group, so there is a type called segment based security group. So Workday has a delivered segment based, okay, based on the segment. If you wanted to give any access to a particular segment, we define a segment based security group. Again, it will have the constrained member who will be defined into that segment, and the user will have the access to that particular segment. Okay. And so there are many, again, tenanted security groups that are available for use for the security configurations. And we can create our own security groups, and then it will have the delivered, constrained, and unconstrained security group also, which is defined by Workday. So now let's discuss about how many type of security groups, okay, that exist in any of the Workday tenant. So mainly the user-based and the role-based are the prominent one which we use when creating any security group. These are the security groups that we create normally. Usually we create those, and it is a one-time setup, right? When we create a security group, when we define a security group, that is one time. But in a support issues, something like unless until there is a requirement for a different role for any kind of security group, then that time we go and create. But we don't play around with creation of security group all the time. So once the security groups are defined, then we will just go ahead with those security groups. So we do a minor modification by giving a different permission, and user wise we just provide the access. But creation wise, it is just a one-time setup during the Workday implementation for any organization that create this kind of security groups. Okay. And user-based security groups. So user-based, for any kind of access, you are manually going and then assigning a security group to any user. So just now we have seen, right? User-based, I just get into the local McNeil, and then from the related action, I just assign the, can log out. So I just went to the assign the security groups, right? So when you go and then access that task, right? So that will give you as you can assign the user-based security groups using that action, okay, using that task. And also you have this assigned security user-based group for any user, or assign user-based group for a person. So these are the different tasks that are available in Workday tenant, which you can access and then provide, manually assign to any kind of user. When we are assigning the user-based security group for person, right? So this one, you will have the ability to first go to the person, and from the related action, you just get into this task, or else you can directly type in assign user-based security group for a person, okay? And then you just type the person name, what is the ideally our Workday account name, and then you can assign, you can remove, and you can assign all the user-based security groups. Okay. So this is one way for how we manually assign the user-based. So role-based, again, we are not manually assigning any role-based. Role-based is something, it will be based on it, defined based on your role, like HR partner. Manager, it is nothing but it is a role, right? So for a manager, there are different standard role-based. So whenever any manager will be hired to the organization, so for manager, we define the job profile, we define the job level, right? And for the organization wide also, this role-based security groups will be automatically assigned to the user. We don't, ideally we don't go and then assign this manager role-based to any kind of user, because since it is role-based, so automatically when the employee is hired, this role-based security groups will be assigned to the user. And we have again, we have a role-based constraint and then the unconstrained. So when we are role-based, right, for a manager means it is, again, it is wider, right? Manager will have the access to view their own employee reported detail, but managers should not be having access to other employee detail in the organization. Okay, manager will have the access only to their own direct reporting information, which like such as your compensation detail or the employees personal data, or the employees, we have the performance appraisal, right? All the appraisals view later, they can, manager will have access. So these kind of security again is defined based on the constraint and then the unconstrained permission. So unconstrained means they will have, the manager will have access to the complete organization employee view. Okay, they can go and view that. Constraint means again you are specifying based on the particular location for a particular organization. So for manager will be managing a different supervisory org, right? So Workday, our organization is defined based on the supervisory organization. So only the manager who is managing that particular supervisory organization, they will have the access to all the reporting. So in that way, we define a constrained and unconstrained permission to this role-based security groups. Okay. So for example, if you wanted to view any role-based security groups, right? So you can just view security group. You can go to the view security group, and here you will have the options to view. If you know the security group name, you can just type in, but when you get into this, here it will tell you what kind of security groups that are exist in the tenant, and which are created, and aggregation, intersection, job based, role based, user based, everything you will be able to view. So when you want to view, again, under role-based security, constrained, unconstrained. Okay. So when you get into that, this role-based security group, let's say we have the absence partner, right? You can go and then you can view. As you can see here, the view role-based security group constraint, it is a absence partner. So it is assigned to a assignable role that is called absence partner. Okay. So you will not have any, when you view any user-based security group, you will have the option of members, okay, where you can see how many members are part of this security, or how many members are already assigned to the security group. But here in the role-based, we are just assigning to a assignable role. Okay. And how this assignable role, you want to again drill down, like how this assignable role is, what does it do? Okay. What does that assignable role does? So in the assignable role, if you can view that, say role name, as we are just defining a role name, role usage. Okay, role usage we have defined based on the supervisory. When I'm going to view domain security policy for setup time off, again, we have this integration permission. Okay, again. So for any kind of any domain, for each domain, you will define whether it is required by the integration or not. You go and define the permission for that, for any domain, irrespective of role-based, user-based, job-based, or whatever it is. And access right to multiple job worker. So role has access to position they support. Role has primary job access for all the position. Role has access to all the position. Okay. So this will be based on the job and position, which in any organization, if we have job management, position management, right, we define that. But the role has access to the position they support. So this absent partner assignable role is right, which is defined by the organization, and for the current organization who is managing the current organization, and any unassigned subordinate who are part of that organization, and also role have access to the position they support. Okay, so this is how we define any kind of role-based security groups.
I'll probably try to engage and connect the previous session, and then we'll talk about the next things. Next 10 slides are kind of important from a reporting or from a audit perspective as well. And we'll talk about it, how they are important, right? Creating security group, you can do it, it's not a big thing. Understanding the reasoning behind it is also important, right? So that's where my focus would be. And then we look at the tenant. Obviously, if this specific slide is, primarily to do everything from scratch. Your company is going live with a new module, or new HRs are there who are taking care of certain things. For example, work from home is happening, right?
Right.
Flex work, or flexible work, hybrid work, some application, this is being created, right? Either using Workday capability, either using Workday extend, either using
Okay.
external ones, whatever. So you are utilizing certain things, you are creating certain things which is new.
Hmm.
And for that, you need certain groups to have additional accesses, or certain accesses which are only available for those people who are managing hybrid work, flexible work, right?
Right.
Flexible work champions, right? Those kind of things. So that's where you need to identify users, that okay, these are the designated people who need to have access. Then you have to think of, do we have existing groups or not? Because most of the times you would be able to handle existing ones. The ideal approach is to keep changes as little as possible from a customization security perspective. Reason being, from a future perspective, right? If you are working with a client for a long time, right, you create multiple security groups. For example, benefits Asia, benefits China, benefits that one, benefits with you, benefits with additional access, benefits superstar, benefit admin. So many things are there. Then managing those are also difficult. So the ideal approach always, if you are, for example, your team Sunil is getting a requirement to create a security group, right? We need security group, we need these people to have this access. The first step should not be to create a security group, right? Creating a security group, no. The
Yeah.
first step should be, okay, let's look at view security for securable item. These guys are telling me the person should have access to these many things, for example, performance, time off, leave. You will find out most of the things are being satisfied by either of an existing group or a combination of two groups, right? You don't want to do two groups, they are saying, okay, no, you don't want two groups, you can combine these two groups and create a new one. But that is not the best way. The best way, like you said, is give that person two security
Mhm.
groups, and then it's done, right?
Yes.
Unless there is a need of creating a third one, or until unless there is a creating of a need of a fresh one, you should ideally utilize existing ones only. In most of the cases, in the in the real world scenario, you will be working in implementation tenants. From a work perspective, you'd be able to handle everything in the implementation tenant. But in production as well, ideally, once you have completed everything from an implementation side of things, right? For example,
Mhm.
integration is done, obviously, and within production system there are specific people who handle security. Usually Workday admins also have very limited access because it's a live system, right? But within implementation, you know that what is the best approach of doing it, right? So even though it tells you to create security groups always, it is not that you will have to create security group always. Most of the cases you would be able to utilize existing Workday delivered ones. There would be existing user based as well. Got it, right?
Right.
Let's say there is a third scenario, because I love talking about practical experiences, right? Let's say there is a third scenario where you found a security group which is exactly matching everything, except one capability or one access is not there. For example, there are 5 things which are being mentioned, 4 are being achieved by one security group. Fifth one, even though it's very not critical one, it is not there. What
Okay.
you can do is ask the person who gave requirement, right? Stakeholder, you're getting these 4, you're achieving 90% of the things by this capability, this security group. The last one, which is very small one, for example, very basic access, that is not there. One thing I can do is modify the existing security group to give that, rather than creating a new one having a very minor difference, right? You're
Okay.
getting my point, right? It is as simple as phone upgrades. iPhone 10 and 11, right? You are telling I have iPhone 10. I can use iPhone 10. But the problem is it is not having, GPS capability. For example, this
Right.
GPS additional capability is not there in this one. Compass capability is not there. What you are telling is I'll upgrade iPhone 10. If you are fine, existing ones also will get benefit. It is not impacting. Can I do that or not? Rather than buying a new phone. So you will ask that person, the stakeholder. In this case, you are just changing certain things. So what you will do is, you will change the existing security groups, which will impact the new group as well and the older ones as well, if they are happy with it. So in that case, you are updating the existing security groups and you are making sure the new person, whoever is getting the access, is getting the right requirements, but the older ones are also getting new additional accesses. This is only possible when the stakeholder says, yeah, this is good to have. There might be a miss. It is in a way beneficial rather than creating a new one. See, creating security groups, you can create 10 times, 100 times, you can create as much as possible. But my objective is to make sure you are not creating it complex to manage as well, right? For example, if you're managing security or your team is managing security, the approach should be to keep it as simple as possible rather than too complicated. Because I've seen very big clients failing because of all this. One good example is Amazon, right? Amazon initially implemented Workday. They have Workday, but considering the complex nature of Amazon, right, how they work, the security has to be either two ways. One of the best ways which I can think of is, if it's too complex of a structure in an organization, right, identify certain people who are the key players. They will get everything. In HRs, they will have certain people who have everything. For example, you being a Workday manager in the team, handling integrations, handling functionals, having team down there, most likely you'll be working cross functional. Most likely you'll be working on, one integration on absence, one is on 401k, one on IRA, one on, SharePoint, one on, certain Salesforce, sending outbound integrations, inbound integrations. You should have most likely some access which is very much elevated rather than having a limited access. Reason being, considering your type of work, you most likely will need, areas across, right? So in general, that is one. Second thing is, for example, an HR is there who is working cross-functional, cross boundaries, most likely given elevated access where he or she might get extra access, but it is easier to manage, right? So that's what I'm saying. In general, these are the, thought processes while creating certain things, rather than creating it very specific. This person is having only view, this person is having only edit. you know what's the point of only view access, right? You can probably have a report created for that person, or outside the system or whatever, right? Those kind of things are the thought provoking things which we need to think from a security standpoint, from a setup perspective, right? So that's one. Activate changes from, activate in general by default, and like toggle capabilities are also there, where automatically it will activate pending security policies without you entering that. So there was an update, I think 2.5 years, 3 years back. People do not prefer to use it actually, if you really ask, but automatically your changes will be activated as well. That is also there. Okay, that is interesting, but people obviously don't like it because you can write comments while activating, right? So it's always better to have an additional step rather than having automatic ones. And finally, obviously, is the testing the changes, which is very straightforward, right? Once you have provided the access, you will ensure that you are able to access or not, right? That's it. Now again, if you are unable to access at that moment, the troubleshooting starts from what you are not able to access. View security for securable item, identify what is missing. Is it in your security group or not? If it's not, you have to add that, right? So those are the approaches, again, kind of linking it to the earlier questions or earlier sessions, right? How do we approach things? Okay, when you edit a security policy, right, or perform anything, it has to be activated. Until you activate, it is not being enforced. Very straightforward, basic slide only, not to cover, not to discuss too much. So whenever you are changing any security group, by removing or adding a security group or modifying certain things, you should activate, even if it's a blank activation. For example, you are not sure that it requires or not. Most of the cases it will require for a security change. If you are not sure, you can run that. It will show it's a blank one. You don't need to, right? It tells you that it's a blank one. It's a confusion as well, because certain specific activities which are tasks based, for example, maintain assignable security, and I'll show you those where you don't have to activate anything because it is not pertaining to security policies. So assumption should be, most likely anything which is related to security policies, functional areas, changing or editing security groups, you have to have this security policy changes enforced. But in a case where it's a task which is not directly security policy related, but task related to maintaining certain things, right? Maintain assignable roles and maintaining certain things, that's where you don't have to enforce, and I'll show you examples of that. if you have performed the change until unless you activate, obviously they are pending, right? They are waiting for your approval in a way, because problem is certain things. And one other thing, it works basically from a timestamp perspective. For example, whatever changes happened at 9 a.m. Okay, 9 a.m. For example, your team member, your junior, your peer activated certain policy changes for his or her business process security. For example, the person is working on certain business process. They're telling now this person is the approver. He or she performed the change, activated. Between 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. you were working in the tenant and there was another person working on the tenant. He might be activating certain other security policies, certain other things. You might be activating certain other things. When
Right.
you are going to activate, it will be from 9 p.m. till 6 p.m., whatever it is there, including that other person as well. So in general, from a security standpoint, you have to ensure that you have to coordinate, should I activate or not? From, so you will get the name of the person as well. You have to coordinate in general, right? So that is one of the things. It is in a way time based. Whatever was the previous one, after that, whatever happened, it will include everything and then enforce that. In general, not keeping this complex, you have to ensure that your security changes are happening correctly. The other ones you can just download a click, or you can reach out to the person. But most of the cases, those changes happen in very small frame of time. You perform security changes within 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you are able to ensure that no one else did that, right? So recommendation would be, ensure that you are doing these security changes immediately. You enforce them immediately rather than waiting for some time, because then it will add on additional things as well. There is a capability to revert back to previous versions as well, but I would not recommend, because that's very, very confusing sometimes. I've seen some changes going through, some changes not going through. So the recommendation should be, for example, that what change you need to perform, you perform the changes, you activate immediately. You note it down, you perform this change, activate it. And there is no limit of it activating multiple times. For example, you have 10 security changes to do, right? Just immediately perform those changes, no worries. You are ensuring that you are performing the changes, testing that changes, and that's over. Next one, you do that change, perform the change, and activate. If, for example, third time you are doing this and someone else change also is showing up in there, you will tell that person, you will reach out to the person, can I go ahead and activate the policy changes? Because the other person might be, most likely is doing the change for his or her work, right? So most of the cases they will say yes only. If not, tell them to revert the changes, so that it is not required, or it is not unintentionally getting activated. So that's one. On the security policy changes, most of the cases, from my experiences, security, once you change it, immediately activate, so that you are aware what you did, and you are able to visualize and feel, okay, this change happened to this due to this change. For example, you have been told, okay, uh, some there are 10 different tasks which need to be activated, right? And you find security for securable item, you understood, okay, this is this is the field, this is secured here, this is the field, this is secured here, this is the task, this is secured here. I'll give the right access to that person, or perform the right changes. But once you once you did that, right, there is one missing, right? There is something missing. So in general, from a troubleshooting perspective, better to do one by one. There is no limit to it. So that is how it works. uh, if you are aware of SAP model as well, SAP HCM, right? There is a concept of transporting, right? Transports between one system to another system. This is similar to that only. A transport might carry additional changes as well if it's being added to the existing transport. So indirectly, it is all that, better to activate immediately rather than waiting, because it might be a difficult thing while there are 10 people working the same tenant, hypothetically, right? Then it is very difficult to manage. So better to do the changes immediately. And this is very straightforward but very important as well. Workday records the time of every security change. It is obviously required in audit, Workday. And this one, Sunil, is, if I tell you from a Workday framework as well, they take backup of this thing within Workday, right? From an audit perspective. So your production system is there, right? Everything, whatever you do, a single click as well is being recorded by Workday, and they store
Okay.
that data with them from a audit perspective. For example, the company reaches out to them. There was some, activity which was suspicious. I feel like certain people's details have been updated or changed, right? Or there is some data leak. Someone ran an integration and downloaded the data, and this is having extract of all the employees about the compensation and the payroll information, right? And that's where people can either they can the company can reach out to obviously Workday experts to tell that, from a timestamp or reporting perspective. Otherwise, in general, if it becomes legal, right, from a law perspective, or in general from a law perspective, they have to reach out to Workday, and Workday will tell exactly. So even though this information is very straightforward, obviously we know everything is being recorded, but Workday records this thing in double backup as well, right? So they make sure whatever change is being performed from a security standpoint is being recorded, because the biggest change which you can do in a Workday system is two things actually. First is obviously data. You change someone's salary, you change someone's information, you change someone's benefits. Second thing is security, because security is hidden, right? You don't know security in the front, right? You won't be able to know that, okay, this profile is there, how much access he or she is having, until and unless a security expert checks that, right? Where it is very critical and which is very, very important. If you see here, Workday evaluates security as of a timestamp. Whatever changes are being performed,
Yeah.
it will be performing between the time range. Obviously you can activate pending security by timestamping your current security configuration, and you can tell Workday Security to activate a previous timestamp. So once, for example, you perform certain change, forgot to activate timestamp, you did certain change, then the next time you are activating, it will include both of the changes, obviously, and then you can activate. Yeah, it's very, very basic one. In general, not recommended the first bullet. If you see, when you activate a previous timestamp, any changes made to security policies after that, the timestamp will be considered pending. So it is confusing. Better way is to, not go to previous timestamp, always use activate, not worry too much. Whatever happened within the time range is being done. This is
Okay.
one of the confusing ones. Activating previous one, I would not recommend it at all from a usage perspective. It is confusing that you have certain changes right now, but you are activating the previous one and not activating the current one, right? Then why you did those changes at the first place, right? They are still pending, right? So it is confusing from that perspective, and not to do, right? For example, my go-to example for that would be your electricity bill, right? You have previous month's electricity bill, let's say, $200 hypothetically. This
Right.
month's electricity bill is $300. If you pay 500, assumption is that both of them are cleared. Let's say company has a grace period of 45 days that you can pay the bill in 45 days. If you are paying 500, then you are making sure that both of them are covered. If you are paying 200, you are not aware that this 200 is going to 300 or the previous one. Why to have that confusion? Why to create mess, insecurity? Better to activate immediately, and not, I won't recommend activating a previous timestamp. Again, you'd have to correct the errors encountered and reactivate it. It is very confusing not activating. The best way is to activate all the changes immediately. Let's say, and this is again one of the capabilities which is given by Workday, the other one which is there, that what is pending right now, right? But I would not recommend using it, because we being Indians, we have a smarter way of doing things. We won't, like, at least personally me, whatever Workday is telling me, we can use that, but there's a smarter way of doing it. For example, you are performing 5 changes, okay, in security policy, on business process policy. You have, and you are not aware that what all changes are being activated, right? You are confused right now. You forgot, okay, I did that or not, right?
Right.
What you can do is select the domain security policy or the business process policy. There is a related action of view latest version from the related action of a business process or a security policy, and see that what all changes are there, you know and it is having a pending one as well. So view latest is there, what all got activated, or view pending as well. It will show from a security that what is pending and what is already activated, okay, from related actions. And let me show you from a visual perspective. View business process security policy, for example, this is the business process. You can go from these steps and view the pending changes, okay. Doing all this, right, it is confusing, it takes time. What I will do is activate pending security policies. I won't activate, the table will give me everything combined. I don't
Okay.
have to go 1,000 places. I'll go there, not going through this route. I'll go
Okay.
there, it will show me all what all is there. I have a choice to click on yes and activate. But at least for my information, I don't have to go multiple security policies and look at what is pending and what is not pending. This is not feasible. This is a good way of learning, but why to have that when you have a consolidated view? Because here,
Okay.
for example, you are working on multiple areas, multiple security policies, or multiple BPs. You'll have to go to everyone and go to related actions, go to view pending. Why to do that? This is a
Mhm.
good capability, but not recommended. Again, this is more from a foundational perspective. Real world, whatever changes you have done, you will activate pending security policies. It will show everything. You know that, okay, these are required or one is missing, you will do that and activate rather than going through this route. Okay. It is good to have, 1,000 things, but not recommended at all. Moving on. This is important. This, I think you should surely, have these bookmarked or, at least be aware of all these changes in general from a security standpoint, right? Obviously, I've told you the key one is view security for secureable item. I think that is the Bible, that is the key one. For using that, that what change has to be performed, number one. And after the change is performed, obviously other important, not report, a task is there, activate pending, which tells you that, everything is being activated. There are certain things which you can run and that there are certain pending changes. Again, these are, these two things, like I told, right? These two things can be used via, these are two different things. You don't need it, but let's say 10 different people are working in that tenant and building a tenant, then this is required, sometimes to coordinate, and discuss. That's it. Otherwise, in general, domain security policy history, for example, someone, or business policy security history, someone was working on an issue and he or she tried to fix it but went on a leave, unable, not giving you KT, not telling you about what all changes they have done and tried and tested or troubleshooted. The way of handling it is, you look at domain security policy history and business process security policy history. That is one. Otherwise, again, telling about real world, you can compare that tenant with a different tenant and compare that security group and know that, okay, this is the change. Real world scenarios, these are good reports to have, but people don't remember it. I don't remember it, right? For example, I am working in a tenant which is a test tenant number one, right? Let's say implementation one tenant is there where I am working. Implementation two, someone else was working and he or she was changing a security group, but they went on a leave. And I need to know what all changes have they performed in that security group. What I will do is view security group in implementation one, view security group in implementation two, then compare screen side by side rather than using these two reports, right? So there is a capability. These are more foundational, like I told you. Once you're building the tenant, you might have to look at these things, but in general, these are good to have. But the real important ones, which I tell you are really important, right, is, in general, where, and these three are kind of more focused towards security from a production tenant as well. For example, there was some additional access provided to certain HRs who should not have access to that information, some confidential information, some information which is very much sensitive, right? About, certain person's, salary or medical history or whatever, right? Then these reports are there, which are kind of audit based. Whatever changes are being performed, this is similar to process monitor report, right, which we have, how it is performing and what is the output and it failed or what happened. These are those reports, if I tell you, right? These are the process monitors for your uh, security changes technically. Domain security policies within that last month, what all change happened, we can tell. Any business process security policy change within last month, what was done, it will show. Audit tail security, this tells about certain transactions and logging, who logged in, at what time they logged in, and all those things. These are good to have, but always, for example, in future, someone tells you or reaches out to you, okay, we want to know with, for that security policy, what all changes were performed, who did that, we remember that certain consultant did that last year, I'm not sure. And you need to perform an additional change there. Then from a historical perspective, you can use it for your benefit as well. Run that domain security policy, see that what all changes have been performed over a period of time, right? So that it gives you a good idea where there is no historical background. So these are good ways of troubleshooting, I would say. Not the there are 1,000 other ways of doing it, like I told you, right? I won't personally use or use certain reports for comparison. For example, someone did what change, I'll use a different fresh tenant which is untouched, compare the existing one, so that we verify, right? Usually that's what we do, right, in terms of troubleshooting certain integrations or certain report output, right? If we are changing a field and everything, right? So that is the approach in general. For example,
You
in
can,
the business process as well, we can write an integration to be running,
okay.
right, after a certain step. That is the only exception where you might have to think from a business process perspective. There are certain certain integrations. For example, for example, someone is getting hired, right? You have a integration step in place. there there might be a case to send the information immediately. Otherwise, usual cases 99.9, and like you said, you will have your integration extracting the data over a period of time and sending that. From an access perspective, your integration should have access to the right domains so that this can be secured. Most of the cases you won't have to worry about business process at all, because the fields are secured within policies, right? You are just you For you as an integration person, the key thing is not the process, not the transaction. You just need the right data which you want to send across. That is number one. Using your logic, for example, there's certain field you will perform certain changes to it. That is totally up to you, or in the calc field, whatever you're doing. But finally, from a real world scenario, you should have focus towards that domain security policies,
Okay.
because that is where you will perform the changes. In general, what I've seen in companies, just giving my thought process, either the integration person takes care of that, or changes that, or usually every company has a security admin or someone taking care of security overall, if it's a big client, right? If it's a smaller one, usually the integration team owns it completely, whatever they need. But in general, from a work perspective, right, what you can do initially, right, once you're starting a work with any firm or any client, in general, talk to the security person, or at least whoever is managing. Try to secure as much security as possible initially. You can tell, okay, I'll be working on integrations on these many areas, I would need this security, so that in general this troubleshooting activities are reduced. Because most of the times, even though you know the issue, even though you have fixed the issue, you don't have the security and you're waiting for it. It is creating time, it is creating tension, it is asking you to go beyond and reaching out to people, right? Why to do that? Get access immediately, or use view security for secureable item. Identify that. If you have the right access, you can activate. If you don't have the access, you can at least tell them directly that, okay, this is the domain, please give me the access, or give me these many roles. Out of this one, any role if you give me, I will get the access, right? So you have more authority here, or more command to drive things from a security standpoint, right? Let's try in general, right, where we can do things smartly rather than overcomplicating, because our objective is number one, to get the integration done and close our work. For getting that, we need to ensure we have the right access, or whoever is the intended user of that integration, intended receiver of that information, should have the right access or not. For example, you are running an integration where there are certain people who should have access to that, or you are creating a custom report and using that custom report for integration, but those HRs told we need custom report access as well, just to verify. Even though you are sending it to vendor, these HRs want to run that report, right? You have to tell them they should have number one, access to the report, right? In general, you'll provide the access to the report, very straightforward. Authorized users or authorized security groups, right? You can do that for a report. But for that specific field, right, what you can do is proxy in that as that person, or tell that person to run that report, and tell them, okay, do you have any report, any field which is blank? If there is certain blank field, that you can direct them that please reach out to your security admin, or I can get the access, right? So in a way, you are playing in a different role as well here. You are expanding your horizon. You don't have to reach out to a reporting expert. Even though you created the report, there is some confusion on certain things. Now with security, you know that you have created the right fields. There must be a security issue, because you are able to access that after getting the elevated access, but not the other person, not the other HR. So let's tell them, you have to give this specific security group to that person, and then we are good. So it is more about expanding things, in general. That's how people think. And for example, you are unable to have create certain reports, for example, then that report writer security group, most likely you don't have. Tell them immediately, give me report writer. Then
Okay.
you'll have access to create reports and everything. So these are very straightforward approaches which in general in the industry we follow. In general, you should have the integration account user group, right? In general, we create integration admin, and
Okay.
using that within integration admin, you can have anything. For example, the name of the security group can be Workday Integration, consultant or Workday admin. In general, for example, in my organization or wherever I'm working or working with a different client, I'll tell them I will work on everything possible. Give me the highest elevated access. So either they have Workday functional security group, Workday security admin, Workday integrations admin, and Workday overall super user, right? So either I can get those three or those two, or either I can get the most elevated one. So for me, I'll try to get that access. And the best thing what you can do is, you already know the reports, view security groups. You can look at different security groups
Okay.
and see who all are there. In general, what I've seen is people create one good security group. If you have that in your organization setup, everyone who is having that should have the right exact same accesses, right? So usually the thumb rule is anything which is user based. Anything which is user based, that means that person is as an exception, right? For example, role based is obviously based on their hierarchy, their job designations, that HR should have access to these reports and that report and all that, or manager should have these accesses. Anything which is user based is elevated in general. Anything which is user based is very much specific in general. Most likely your additional accesses would be within those user based security groups, most of the cases. That is the approach which we do is. And the best approach would be, for example, I've seen, sometimes there are certain things which are kind of confusing as well, but you have your implementation tenant with you and you have the security ability to add security groups to you. Okay, so then you have got best thing in the world. You are confused that my integration is working correctly, or is there some issue with my security, and you don't have that much time. You
Right.
have very limited time to troubleshoot. You are going to view security for secureable item, identifying that, but it is confusing, you are getting confused. What you can do is assign all security groups to you. By all, I'm not saying everything possible in the system. Whatever makes sense, right? In general, for example, there is a certain field which is talking about compensation grade profile, right? That's where I'll see whatever is compensation or HR related. I'll let me give access to all that to me, and let's run the integration again. If it is giving the right output, then it is giving in number or not. I need output in that integration output. It is giving me or that. If it's giving, then slowly try and remove other ones. Slowly exclude certain things. That can be an approach where you are not thinking too much about securable item, right? If you don't have enough time. But if you have to be very much specific for future, that okay, I need to have exact real access, then what I will suggest is view security for secureable item. Look at that field, identify that, and look at, okay, this is the specific security group. Let's get that, and let's get that updated. Then you'll be able to access that. In Sandbox, once you do that, you will see, okay, view security for yourself, or that anything related to security or configuration, that role you need to give. So what you will do is, you will go to, now you have proxied in as that person. Let's say Raj, you have proxied in as me, and now you will go to Sunil's profile, your profile. Go to related actions, assign security groups to user, that one, the related action one, which you have seen already, and we can again go through it tomorrow as well if you really want. You will assign those security groups, click on OK, and then you are done. Then stop the proxy. Now you are logged in as Sunil. Let's see you have the access or not. Then you will have the accesses, right? So this is one of the ways of doing it. Ideally, in the real world, if you don't have an implementation tenant, right, where it is not, implementation, obviously you can set the frequency of a refresh, but obviously Sandbox gets refreshed every weekend, right? It is by default. Workday tells you until and unless you request for an exemption, by default Sandbox will refresh every Saturday, as per the time zones by Workday, right? So whatever changes from security standpoint are being done, those get vanished, and that's a painful time, because your window is reduced. Now you have to wait that for that again. So the approach should be, go to that person, proxy in as that person, assign those roles, and do it, right? That is the best way. The other way is, talk to that security person, because you need these accesses. Let's grant them those, if possible, if that can be done. But again, that comes with a caveat, right? In production as well, you get elevated access. So most of the cases people do not do that. There are 2 or 3 ways of doing it. First one obviously is, Go to that person, proxy in as that person, and do that. Number one. Number two is get that changed in production so that in sandbox you don't have to do anything. The third one is an interesting one, obviously, which you are aware. For all the bigger projects, Sunil, like if you're doing a bigger integration, complex integration, we are transforming, there is a document delivery step. There are, certain changes which you need to perform, which is taking time. Sandbox get refreshed, your effort is wasted, right? In general, that gets refreshed. So in general, if the implementation tenant is there, that would be wonderful. If not, the only approach would be to keep a clar file handy, right? Proxy in on Monday and again do that, right? Obviously, that is the approach which people do. But obviously, the best way is, to use implementation tenant. Obviously, that's a cost where the company has to see if they have, how many tenants available. In addition to creating security groups, you have the ability to view, edit, copy, delete, or inactivate security groups. In general, which is very straightforward. You can obviously view a security group, edit, copy. Copy is a good one, and copy is very smart one. Why I am telling you that is, if you copy, you have an option to keep the existing alignments as well. For example, you have a gym, your very famous gym. That gym is having some legal issues where you have to move out of that gym, but you want to keep the people and keep their accesses, and you are opening just 2 blocks away, right?
Right.
You have the new place. What you will do is, everything will be copied over, including the accesses, including the membership. There are 2 ways of copying. You just say bye bye, that gym is over, please come to me in the future, my new gym, which is just 2 blocks away. Or you can do is tell them that your security group or your gym, I'm copying in the new place, I will keep the memberships as well, I'll keep the people as well, and I'll keep the policies as well. So I know that, for example, Raj was a member or Sunil was a member, they have certain accesses, platinum, gold.
Mm-hmm.
Either I just create the accesses without telling that, Raj and Sunil, you are part of my gym. Or you can tell them is, while you're copying a security group, you can copy the security permissions as well as user assignments. So both of the things as well you can do. So now again, this capability, how it is useful, company is telling you certain people, certain set of HR, certain set of people, they should have HR accesses, plus they should have certain additional accesses, and you cannot change the existing one, because other people, additional 5 people are joining. Those should be part of only that group, not the new one. That is why we are creating a new one. So there is HR partner, which is having 10 people, and there are 5 interns joining with an HR partner. Those should have only access as HR partner. But there is a new security group whose HR partner and remote work expert, or flexible champion or whatever, they have some certain additional things. But what the HR told you is, these 10 people only, they should have access of HR partner as well, and this one as well. So what you can do is, because there might be 5 interns joining this team which have both the accesses, so that's where you are just copying the existing security group where HR partner roles are intact, and you are additionally adding certain additional things. So that's where you don't have to assign those people again, because 10 are already there. So that is saving time for you. If you create a first one, new security group, brand new, then once the security group is over, assignment is also there, right? You have to assign security groups to certain users. That way we are copying the existing assignments as well. And in case new one comes up, obviously we'll have to do it manually, but at least we are saving some time of assignment and some time of adding HR partner security policies, because those security policies are automatically copied. Anything and everything which is impacting the security, it's going to take some time, but let's run this report. You should ideally have access to certain audit reports as well, in your capacity. So this is one of the reports. For example, uh, in some time in future, right, they will tell you, do you have any you might be managing overall Workday system, you might be managing everything end to end, and sometimes these roles come into the integration head to kind of look at certain exceptions, Workday releases and all. They'll ask you, are there any security exceptions in our company, in our tenant, right? Is there
Yeah.
any issue with the security, right? We have a vendor, and which is kind of looking at certain things. So this is the report which is useful, which will tell you 2 things: domain security policy exceptions. Number one, security group exceptions. So it will tell you certain issues, so information is, severity wise, information is very just for good to have. For example, if you see absence admin security group. Okay, this is a security group, which is a user based security group. If you see this one, ADP tax filing, there is a security group which is being created, right? Which is used with a certain dashboard. That security group is not correct. It is having some issues there. You will find certain information based and usage based, right? So that's where it is helpful, this report. If you are finding some issues, even though the security person is telling you everything is fine, and you are not able to do it, most likely there might be configuration issue as well. So that's one with respect to security group exceptions. Okay, so it's obviously not that useful for you, but it is always good to know about this exception report. Now if you see here, on the domain security policy, for every policy it might tell you. So you can see it is having a lot of issues with workload, right? If you see, let's see, due to change of the domain security type restrictions, one or more security groups are now invalid for the use in security policy. Edit the security policy, remove the invalid groups, and activate it pending policy changes. So what it is telling is, in this one there were some changes which impacted the overall policy, right? Okay, so these are the good to have kind of things which is one of the good reports. So security exception audit, if you type security exception, anything related to security, it will tell you a lot of reports to you, security history. Now this one, we talked about it in detail, right? Activate pending. So this, if it tells you everything, whatever is there, it will show up here. You can write a comment performing these changes, and this would be able to activate all the pending security policy changes. Now let's look at another one as well. Let me cancel that. The tenant is extremely slow. That's why I'm using a different one as well. Sometimes these things take time because, right now there might be some integration runs or those kind of stuff. Anyways, now let's look at one of the things which is there. View security for groups for user. This is an amazing report as well. It will tell you what all security groups the person is having. If you want to know number in your team, you want to understand how many roles that person is having, and you want to have that role because you ask that person, are you able to access this report? Are you able to see these values? What you will do is you will find out that person's name, which you are aware. Let's take any random name. Let's say if someone with Rob is there, it's going to take some time. So this will tell you groups are there with that person. I want to show, let's take this one for example. So this employee is having what all type of security groups. The person is having certain security groups from non-HR membership, unconstrained, personal information documents, segment-based, time of tracking, candidate information. All users and all employees are by default with everyone, right? And let me show you another one which is very different from let's take someone else. Now someone working as a admin might have different security groups. So if you see the number is substantially increased, these are the people which we can think of, these people might have certain admin. Let's find out. The usual strategy which I do is, anything with admin is mostly really important and useful, and anything with admin is mostly user based as well, which is very specific, mostly user based. So if you see here, setup admin, this will give you access to setup. Security admin, these are the good ones, which is having report admin is also there by default, and you can create your own as well. Recruiting admin, these are the roles which are very much specific and which are very much useful. If you see compensation admin, this person would have everything and anything related to compensation. So this is how you can view your anyone's, including yourself, the roles which are there with that person. And let's see, for the sample user which I've logged in, I'll go to the security groups, security profile, and you can see add, assign roles, add and remove roles, assign user-based roles, right? So user-based ones is having a different area to add on. And if you see what all this person is having, is this person is having all these roles. I'll just get a click, and if I'm too lazy, I'll do control A, enter, and include everything, right? In the dev tenant, in the implementation tenant. If you see here, copy security group telling do not use, because with the recent updates, it is not being recommended. If you see here, this report is will be retired, not retired right now. Please maintain permissions for security group instead. This one, if you remember, let's show you that. So that select a security group to copy, that you had options. This will be retired, but this will be there in the system. It's not like that Workday will retire something immediately. It is like deprecated fields. This capability would be there, but if, for example, let me take another security group which is there, for example, uh, let's take the test one. I have an option to choose security permissions as well as user assignments as well, include every person as well, which is there. So I think this came with the latest update where it is telling the do not use, that most likely they will retire this one. Okay, but we do have this one, and let's look at this one, that what it is telling. Maintain permissions for security groups. Always good to learn multiple things, right? This is a certain things they have created, they have given you a good capability. So what it is telling you is modify and review security permissions on a specified security group, or copy security permission from one security group to an existing different version of things, right? So that's where with every update trail, you might find certain things which are, kind of changing as well, like this one. But, as long as you are aware of the basic concepts, it should not be a big problem. And I'm happy in a way that, we are able to kind of link to certain things. If you see this one, view security for secureable item, right? This is, my all-time favorite one, where we can find, let's take an example, compensation grade. You might be using compensation grade in certain report. So let's say a report field is there, which is kind of an important one. So if you see here, get compensation grade, or let's take another example. So if you see here, let's take some sample field, right? Now employees in compensation grade, this is a multi-instance field which is secured with worker, and we want to find out why do we are unable to access this field, right? So what I'll do is view security. I clicked on that, and this is secured under security policy of this one, functional policy of this one, and permitted security groups. Automatically identify something which seems to be the right one for me. Most likely you might be using an account which you can tell your security person to add it here, or you can tell, for the time being, give me HR auditor, HR manager, general manager, compensation partner, these kind of roles. You can get that. Go to your profile and go to the related actions of security, assign those roles, and then you will be able to access that field. So this is usually the best approach for your integration to, for anything which you are unable to access, you can do that. Another way is obviously go to, this domain and changing the policy and all those things, which we can think of doing. For example, person who is handling the security, right? Go to this domain and update it. Or if you want to update, what you can do is add a row, identify what security group you already have. One thing is either you assign HR partner local to yourself. Another thing is your security group of integration, you are giving an access, let's say compensate, something else, let's say absence. Most likely absence won't be there here. So what you already have absence admin, you are telling now absence will also have the access. So modify. And if you see here, system is by default telling you please activate, otherwise it will be a problem. So system is that smart. It is telling you, if you are updating something, please ensure to activate by these changes if you want to do that. So the assumption here is you are giving yourself, you already have an absence admin, but now you are giving absence admin to this specific connection. You are giving this security to absence admin. Otherwise, the other way is, not changing the security, just add this security group to yourself, changing anything. So if you see here, the good part is, for most of the security places, if you see, These are the secureable actions, worker compensation data. If you scroll down, there are integration permissions as well, get in. So here you can see different security groups are there, different vendors. If you can see, you can add your own as well. These are, obviously integration security groups which are being used, right? These are, unconstrained security groups being created and those kind of stuff. Hope this is helpful. And once you click on this one, you can activate, and that's all pretty much, that's the thing which you can do immediately. So I think on the I would say overall, these are the key things. One more thing I'll try to show is probably the reports which we went through. I want to give you, because that gives you a good amount of, different type of reports which are there. If you write 10 different tasks and 10 different reports with you, I think that's pretty much it. View security for secureable item, edit, activate pending security policies. How do you view the domain security policy history? How do you know business process security policy history? Domain security policies change within the time range. Let's look at this one, which is an interesting one. So if you see here, I'm used to security, so people call it DOMSEC-POL, right? In general, that is what people have, acronyms. So for such, so if you see domain security policies change within the time range, it is telling you summary, it is telling history, it is telling you with pending policy changes, right? So it tells you a lot of things which are really, really good. Let's look at this one. For example, now the time range, let's take off, a big one. No, it's going to take forever then. If you see here, it is telling you so many changes and who all performed those changes. If you see here, now at what timestamp, it will tell you that what policy was changed by which person. What I'll do is I'll get certain. All right. So this should not, I don't want to give a lot of effort on this one for you, but it is always good to have. Regarding the ISG and ISU accounts and the historical part, we'll get that. But regarding this one, you can know this one just as a high level, but from a work perspective, it's not going to be impacting you so much, but always good to know. Sometime somewhere, you might change roles, and somewhere the kind of responsibility might vary. So it's always good to have. If someone tells you that and asks you, do you know security, then it's always good to know about all these things as well. Now we'll talk about certain things. Don't worry about the agenda directly. In general, from a terminology perspective, right, from a knowledge perspective, if someone asks you what is role-based security groups, these are the roles which are, in general, the support and leadership roles. These are actually the HRs or the partners or the admins, or those people who are the transaction-based people actually. And these type of security groups in general are defined based on certain roles. If you are, for example, if someone is a manager, then they will get this access. Someone is a benefits person, then they will get the access. So it is very much role based or type based, if you see, right? So that's one. In general, if I told you, if you remember my gym example, right, there are two ways of doing it: constrained and unconstrained, right? Have everything and anything possible in terms of my access, which is very much specific, which can be very much specific to my country or department or people, whatever. So there are ways of handling constrained security groups and unconstrained security groups. What is the logic behind, unconstrained and constrained? In general, from a work perspective, always assign yourself unconstrained for testing purposes. That ways you'll be able to access the data across the board, across the tenant, versus a constrained one where the access might be restricted to certain things. And that's where we will talk about the next things as well. So in general, from a work side of things, always look at unconstrained ones, not constrained ones. Now, the interesting part about role-based security groups is they have an concept of assignable role. These kind of people are assigned to assignable role, and those are indirectly linked to the role-based security. So within a role-based security group, you will see an assignable role, and you assign a role to a given person or a position. Okay, so there is a linkage between, if you see, the specific role-based security group as well as the person. So for example, you are assigning technically yourself benefits admin, right? And let me try to show it in the tenant so that it is useful. That what I'm talking about from a visualization perspective. So if you see here, there is constrained and unconstrained. Let me open that and I'll show you one. So if you see this security group, let me open here. The security group is 1099 analyst, right? Assignable role which we give is 1099 analyst. The name can vary. We assign this one to the people. So all the role-based security group, once you create, they'll have this one as the assignment thing. And you have an option here to assign to current organization, assign to all subordinate organizations and all that. So this is how you control the constraint part of things as well. It is telling you within the security group what all accesses are there. These are role-based security group. From an assignment perspective, you will assign this one, and this will show you that how many people are there and how many assignable roles are there and everything. So assign role-based security using assignable roles. Now, assignable roles, you have a capability to maintain it to different organization types. You can maintain it for different people. You can have certain rules behind it, and better to show you that again, because then it is easier to visualize. So if you see this task, not useful for you that much, but good to know again. This is obviously part of the documentation which we have. So maintain assignable roles. Here you define what all things can be used as assignable roles. And within that, you can define, what all things are there. What is the default role, where exactly it can be assigned, who can assign this and all those things, where exactly in which security group it is linked, right? It is showing this one. If you see usage one, it is linked to security admin role technically, right? So that's where it is being, this one is 10991, right? Yeah, this one is linked to this one. If you see the same one which we saw. So if you see here 1099 analyst, this is not telling you about constrained or unconstrained, that where exactly it can be linked. Okay, which all entities, which all organizations it can be linked. Number one, the constrained and unconstrained part is not happening here. If you see the security group, let's open the security group. The assignable role is just a way of connecting the person with that this thing, with that security group. But if you see here, I'm just going to related actions and edit. If you see here, this defines what exactly is the constraint level. If you see people while configuring, they try to use the supervisory ones only. What they will do is they will assign it to certain leaders. For example, there are HRs handling different teams. Under CTO, they will assign this role. So everyone below CTO, that HR will be able to have an access. Everyone below to the marketing head, they will have access. So usually they do like that. They assign at a very high level and use all subordinates, so that it will indirectly become constrained, but it is constrained having a lot of access as well. Technically, no one would be doing constraint to very small levels, done at a very high level only. For example, at a country level. So for example, if you want to define based on country, right, then your company's structure is not country based, people are working in mixed teams, then you might use location hierarchy, or you might use company code, company hierarchy, right? But in general, that becomes extremely complex, Sunil. What people do is try and handle using this structure only, supervisory structure, and assign it a very high level. These are the setup things. Actually, if you see, not very frequent, but it is good to know that that this is a constrained security groups and unconstrained security group. So it is always good to know about these things. And let me show you one more. I'm just opening one more for you, not this one. So security, if you see, right, every time we go to any security transaction, it takes usually a lot of time. In general, security takes in general a bit of more time in comparison. So let me show you unconstrained one so that it is giving you more clarity. Now let's look at this one. There is no security assigned to this one. Let me open another one for you. This should be, let's take another one. HR partner and constraint. This is interesting. If you see here, the assignable role is HR partner. The role is open to everyone. Whoever is having HR partner will have everything and anything possible with these things. Okay, not related to any organization here. Assignable roles are manager, accountant, payroll partner, cost center manager, HR partner by location. If you remember that slide where I went to maintain assignable roles, right? You had an option to enable it for different organization types. Now, organization supervisory is one of the common ones, but people can enable it to company. For manager, supervisory makes more sense, but for accountant, company or company hierarchy makes more sense. Cost center manager, in general, cost center hierarchy would be more useful. For HR partner by location hierarchy makes more sense. So this is how the variation happens. In general, that is how you define at the maintain assignable area that where exactly this can vary. And the examples are also given. The manager can be IT help desk, tax accountant, an example is there, director, payroll operations. It is enabled for pay groups, cost center hierarchy, and manager by location as well, HR manager by location. Now, this one is an interesting one, which we are already aware. If you see, we have seen that how do you look at access constraints using certain logics. So we are aware of constraint and unconstrained already. Now, the methods, there are good and a lot of methods of doing that. The best way is always manual. Role assignments involve associating a worker's position or job with a given assignable role for given organization or a role-based instance. How these roles are defined actually. In general, the best way is to assign at the organization level. The best one is to assign it an organization level. For example, anyone and everyone who is HR partner, we assign it to that organization so that, if the person who is an HR partner gets that access from that organization, then we are good. And then we are all set to maintain that one for the whole organization. So usually people do at the organization level as well. We have an option to update at the worker or the job level as well. You can do it for a position as well. With that position, what are roles you are providing, that is also there. In the business process as well, you might want to add a step as well. It is purely functional, don't worry about it. And using a web service as well, you can update the security groups as well. Very straightforward, nothing out of the ordinary. Web services using certain EIBs and using that, nothing out of the world in that one. But the good part, or the important part, is only the members of role maintainer security group can assign roles at the role instance level. People who are at the role maintainer security group and security admin, for example, with the role maintainer is the term. Really, if you have security admin access, you can do that. You will be able to see the roles only which you are able to assign. And this is interesting to know. And let me show you that why it is telling that for you. That maintain and assignable roles is very, very important in a way, because it is a small dashboard for these kind of roles. It is having certain options to handle, right? Certain things to handle, right? If you see here, you can enable it for multiple things, right? You see here assigned by security groups. Only the security admin can assign this role. If I want to give any other person also the capability to enter that, I can identify and add that. But in general, only the security admin is the person who has the ability to assign 1099 to certain companies or company hierarchies. So that's where the definition of that one is there, where it tells you that the way the assignment is only for a certain set of people only, not for everyone. This assignment, obviously it's a task based, it is not a business process based, so no approval flow is required. As soon as you update it, at the organization level, it is automatically being there because there is no process involved for it. Now, this is very straightforward. Assign roles, add or remove. You can use these options to add roles or remove certain roles or copy certain roles from another worker as well. So there are capabilities in terms of handling it for workers position and job, and which we can show in the upcoming section as well, once we go to the tenant as well again, that how this works. But in general, from your perspective or from your side of things, you can do that to a worker and assign it to that. So this one is the option which you see here, in general, assign or add or remove roles, assign, change assignments. So this capability is there where you can assign it for a worker's position or a job, or directly to a worker as well. Indirectly it is doing that. Now, this one, it is an interesting thing, and I don't think a lot of people like to use it. It is a capability. So you can assign roles using an integration as well. This web service is there. It initiates assign roles business process. So you can assign you. So technically this web service obviously initiates a business process, which is assigned roles, right? So that business process, if you coordinate with functional people, or you want to work on something, you can surely be involved in these kind of invoking that specific web service and indirectly invoking that business process as well, right? So this is also a good capability to know, that in future, for example, you have, the company is telling, we need to assign a specific certain group of people these kind of roles. Now doing manually is going to be painful task. That's where we can do this capability as well using assign roles via an integration. Or what I can do is, if you remember copy security groups using members, right? I will identify a group which is very much specific and copy and membership as well, copy the people as well there. So manually as well, that can be done technically, but for that only the specific group should be there, which is kind of the related one. That is also a good thing to know. When a worker's position or a job is assigned to a role, anything which is not being updated in the downstream hierarchy, it is automatically inheriting the top one. For example, whatever is being assigned at the top of the hierarchy, automatically it is trickling down to the bottom of the hierarchy as well. So for example, if we assign certain roles at the CTO level, Chief Technology Officer, and there are different teams under that, automatically whatever is the assignment, it is kind of inheriting to the downward supervisory organizations as well. Until and unless you change these, these would be automatically going down. And if someone is assigned at the CTO level as certain specific role, that person would have access to the downstream areas as well, right? So in general, if you want to assign something, what people do is, for example, your chief HR is there, right? The main CHRO, whoever is the head of HR team, should have access to the topmost level. As soon as the person is assigned at the topmost level, then we are good that anything and everything below the CEO, the HR would be able to see and handle. That is how people assign different roles. These are very much towards the functional side of things, but good to know that if you assign at the top, you are good to go. If you find, for example, you are looking at a report, right? And you are not able to see that field, and you found out, okay, by going to the security for secure level item, okay, this seems interesting, that I can get this role based security group and assign it to me. Where do I do that? What I will do is I'll go to the topmost org, assign that to me, and then I'm good to go. If there is a user-based security group, that also is fine. But if it's a role-based security group, the best approach would be to go to the topmost organization and assign that.
So integration, it is basically for our, whenever the implementation tenant, right, where we are giving more access to certain group of users. Let's say for our Workday consultant, right? So for Workday consultant in production environment, we will be having very limited access, whereas in other implementation tenants, we will have the more broader access in order to do certain configurations or in order to proxy certain group of employees. So what this integration does is whenever, like when our sandbox tenant get refreshed every week, after that this automated integration will be run and automatically this additional role will be assigned to those group of workers.
Okay.
So this role assignment using an integration, it is very helpful in the real-time scenario. So that is how whenever you see your roles from sandbox to prod, this is how you will get the differentiation, right? And the integration also based on the workday refresh and all those integrations are scheduled. And after that, you get the additional access to your sandbox tenant. So this role-based security group, right? We had already discussed like what is a role-based security group. Let's see more about what are the access right of to the organization, how the different options will be able to in the role, how it will differentiate certain group of organization subordinate will have a limited access, whereas what all these options looks like when you go and set up any role-based security group. Okay, so as we can see, we have this role-based security group as accountant. The accountant group criteria, there is a assignable role and access right to organization. So below there are 4 options are there, which has different type of setup, like you will give different type of role assignment for this accountant role. Okay, and even the access right to multiple job workers, also there are different, this role has access to the position they support, like this has different meaning. Whenever we have a specific kind of requirement, we go and select out of this 4, we select either one of the options. Okay.
Okay.
So let's talk about in detail how these 4 options, right, how it differentiate in between an organization. So the first option, we have this current organizations only. So when, by looking into the name of the exercise, current organizations only means it will have all the members who are available in that organization. So if you can look into this picture, this person we have, there are 3 again below management chain is there, and one of the subordinated assigned to one more position. Okay, but whenever we are giving the current organization only, they will have the access only to that belong to that assignable role, and for only for that organization. It will not have any broader access to the other organization or any other subordinate. But when we have the current organization and unassigned subordinates, so whenever we select this, so as we can see in the second picture, it has the current organization as well as unassigned. There are no subordinate in this organization, but they will have the access to all to the current organization and all the unassigned subordinate also.
Okay.
Okay. So these kind of role-based security are very much important, where we have, right, first the manager will have the first level access to their own subordinate, right? But when we are looking for the management level 1, management level 2, or the director of the organization, or the VP of the organization, the CEO of the organization, right? That is how we differentiate this role-based setup based on this access right. Okay, the director in the higher management level managers, they will have the access to the entire organization which they are supporting for, right? So that is how it differentiates the access between these role-based security group. And again, the third one is current organization and all subordinates. So it will have, as we can see here in this picture, it is the current organization and also this subordinate who belong to that assignable role in that organization. And then we have the current organization subordinate to the level. Okay, so here we have there is in the role-based security also we have this levels, right? Management level 1, management level 2. We can also define based on the level we can define the roles restriction in any kind of the role-based security group. So how these security roles are assigned, we can look into the tenant also. So first, let's look into this task. Maintain assignable role, where this is also one way where you can assign the role to any kind of directly also to, you can assign to any particular group, or you can assign to any worker. Okay, in Workday role you can assign, but how it has been configured in the tenant. So if you can look into the tenant, so maintain an assignable role, this is the task. Okay, so first, as you can see here, we have all the role names that you can see here in the role name field. So whenever you try to create or run any integrations, right, which you don't have the access to perform any activity. Say if you don't have access to view a pay group, right, but you are trying to update certain thing for that particular pay group, then definitely your integration will fail because of the access. Okay, ADP is your payroll company. Integrations, I don't fall under this integrations, running any issues. I can help you with the access, right? But I can help you like, so if you can see here, you have around 22 items are there. Okay, so under the integration administrator also you have, scroll down, payroll administrator, security group. Okay, you have payroll integration, report writer. No, under payroll, you have only the administrator related access. Okay. So payroll administrator means who will do all the admin related job. Okay. You will not be having the access to view any payroll, any employee in that consisting of a particular payroll. So when you are trying to run the outbound security group, right, where you are sending all the employee related data, employees earnings and payrolls, those staffing related access you don't have here. So normally what we do is, because right now you are not even a security administrator in your organization. So what we do is we reach out to the security team that I'm missing some security, because you are not the security administrator, you cannot view any security group. For this, a integration expert is required. Okay, it is not the role of a security administrator. By looking like that, we cannot see that, because here we need to see what exactly consists of in this integration. If you give any, the first basic thing is for all the fields that are there in your even that, if you can see here, right, it has something called view only operation Workday data support role. Security group has the view only access the staffing. Okay, whether you have access, are you missing with any of this access, like that also you need to check. So it has implementer, EIB segment, initiator. Okay, payroll integrations, also it is there. For all the role-based security group, you can access the task for maintain assignable role. And then when you look into the role name, you can enable for which kind of, whether it will be enabled for a company or company hierarchy, or it is for a supervisory or any specific, you can mention the location hierarchy, or if it is for a location also, you can define that. So based on the location or the company hierarchy or the supervisory, or you set up this role and then you give it to a particular, you assigned by security group. When you see it, right, security always assigned by security group, it will be security administrator. So security administrator are the one who have the access to assign any security roles to anyone, and they will also have the access to view all kind of tasks in the under the security. At least the view access the security administrator will be having. And the security configurator is a role which you can You can modify, you can create your own security group, you can modify, you can give permission to a security, and you can activate the security group. So these are the way the security administrator, like if you can look into this role, you will be able to identify that, okay, it will be done by the security administrator. This is how you define any role-based security, and then assign the security role-based security using a maintain assignable role. And what are the different fields under this? So first we have this role name, which is you can just mention any kind of role. It is whether it is an analyst role, managed role, or we have seen the access partner, compensation administrator, payroll administrator. These are the different role-based security group. You can just provide this role. And Workday role. So there are certain Workday provided role, like directly the manager or benefit partner you can provide that Workday uses on non-security purpose, such as populating workload or generating reports. So only the roles that appear in the prompt are available to map. And once they are mapped, they no longer appear in a prompt list. It means when you are Workday roles, right? Here it is mentioned the Workday role, right? If you are assigning that, it is just one time, but it is an optional field. It is not a mandatory. So mandatory field, if you can see here, we have a role name. So Workday role, if you have, once we can assign that, we can just assign the Workday specific role if we have anything. And enable for, so this field is the most important field. You wanted to enable this for which organization, what is the type of organization for which you wanted to maintain and assign this role. So that is how we can mention based on our company hierarchy, supervisory, or the location hierarchy, different kind of field we have. We can just enable that using this. And default role. So what is the meaning of a default role? When a role is unassigned, the role assignment can be inherited from a superior organization. This field allows you to select another role to be used as a default assignment. Available default role are the other roles that are valid in the same organization type. So if you can go to the default role, right? Again, this is a optional field, but if you wanted to, by default, you wanted to assign to any default role, you can just mention over here. And also we have this self-assigned, right? Whether if this is enabled, it will be automatically assigned, or you wanted to assign by any restricted or assigned self-assigned rules to business process. Okay, restricted to single assignment. So there are certain role-based which will be restricted to a single assignment. You can just, based on that, you can enable that. And hide on view if not assigned. So if it is not assigned, it will be hidden for a worker. So that will be that is enabled, then they will be no longer, if it is not assigned, you won't be able to view this role. And this field is leader or is a supporting. So for this kind of role, whether it is a supporting role or is it leader, that also you can define, or if it is also none of these above, also you can mention that. So based on this, these are the different field which you can maintain while creating a maintain assignable role. So for the configuration step, so run the maintain assignable role task, okay, and confirm the assignable role that is defined. Run the create security group task and select the role, use usable desired role. So where we have seen that, right? Maintain assignable role. Okay, so here you wanted to create anything, you are feel free to just go ahead and then you can create your own role. The system will not restrict you to define anything. It can be anything. But ideally, when this is a role, right, we are defining the rules. So we just mention based on what kind of role that role will be used by many people. But if you want to assign with your name also, there is no, system will not avoid anything. You can just create this. And other Workday role, you can also, let's say for benefit, if I wanted to benefit partner is a role, right? So first we got the error. Role is enabled for multiple type of role assignment, which is not recommended best practice. Workday recommend you to configure separate role and security group for each role assignable type. This best practice certain apply to related org type, cost center or hierarchy. So that is the reason if we create anything, any role, right? If you can see Workday role that will be already defined, already existing we have. So they ask us to create your own type which you wanted to define. So let's say here I am just mentioning as location hierarchy, right? For a particular location, I wanted to define this. Or if it is a company or custom organization type also, if you want to define based on particular division hierarchy, also you can do that. Or location hierarchy or a regional hierarchy, also we have this kind of custom organization type where you can define that. Okay. And if it is a leader, it will be, you can just mention that. And then I'm just going ahead and create it. If a role name is required, role name. Okay, we didn't mention the role name. I think this one is the empty one. Okay, so now this role is created. As you can see here, if you can find your name, right? We just created a role. Okay, we did not assign any role-based security groups. So once you assign thing, then it will be appearing here. Okay, so if we can see here, for let's review like compensation, any of the existing. Okay, let's say we have this compensation finance partner, right? So here for the compensation finance partner, already assigned by security group, a security administrator, and we already have this role-based security group is already assigned. So in that you can view which role has been assigned, and also you'll be able to see what is the usage, means how many members are already assigned to this role-based assignable role. So if you can see here, this compensation finance partner is a role-based security, and total role assignment count is 31. Total assignable role relationship count is 32. And what is the role-based security group name? This is also. So where it is used also, you will be able to see that in this. Workday already delivered lot of standard role name, but if you wanted to create a separate one on your own, then you can just define that by mentioning what is the security role that you wanted to assign to a particular role. So first we create a role-based security group, and then we create a role and then assign that role to a role-based security group. So that is how the role-based security group is mapped to a role. So whenever we view any kind of the role-based security group, right, where you will be see that assignable role. Let's say this is one security group, right? So here you see the assignable role. So this assignable role, where it is nothing but it is coming from the previous screen where we have created. Condition role-based security group, you can create a multiple condition, let's say for a manager 2 level or for a management chain, you can also create condition-based security groups.
And I'll tell you one interesting thing, not sure if you're aware of it. If you're already aware, that's good, but not, then that would be also helpful. So I created a security group, gave a password, and this itself gives you a lot of power that if you're enabling or letting and do not check this box, right? So what you can do is whatever user ID and password you have given, you can actually log in into the tenant and see the power or the security which is associated with your own account. But in general, in real time world, we check click this box because we do not want anyone to actually have a UI session or log in through these alias. Let's create this security group. As of now, we have, okay, so we just created a secure. Now the next task obviously is create integration. Okay, so this here. Okay, so let's create a security group. And in this case, obviously, when we are dealing with integration stuff, right, like the tech part of Workday, so we will pick up the unconstrained one. That is, so we always pick up integration system security group unconstrained one. And behind it is that when you are picking this template in the background, so what unconstrained versus constrained means that, hey, you are creating an alias user, and unconstrained over here signifies that it is your responsibility to give the relevant access to this particular security give or the domain permission. Like, in Workday, the security permissions are basically of two types: domain permissions and business process permissions. Like, the policies, basically what I'm talking about: domain policies, business process policies. So unconstrained, when you pick it up, then it gives you a flexibility to actually pick your own set of policies, which you have to give it to this security group or associate with this security group. So right now, let's choose this template. And I am going to create, and that's a naming convention, obviously, and which is a standard one, but definitely organizations use. Yeah. And here what we do is, as of now, we will just attach our ISU, which we had created. We are just attaching it. Obviously, right now, nothing makes sense. The only thing what it is making sense is, as a standalone, we created a security user. As a standalone, we created a security group. And all I'm trying to do is attaching the security user to this security group. Now, I also have the privileges to attach any number of security users security group. So that's a flexibility given to me. And under what circumstances I would do that? So let's say a simple example, like if there are 5 payroll related integrations, like, Peachy or Peakoff in a real-time scenario. So let's say you are in US, and EMEA is one section, NAMER is one section, APAC is one section, right? So if there are payroll related integrations, Peachy integration, any of stuff for APAC, like, for APAC country, India, Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, and you would want them to have a similar kind of access, like, those ISU account. So what you will do is you will create a separate ISU for each of those country. Let's say ISU underscore Peachy underscore India, ISU underscore Peachy underscore Japan. But what you're gonna do is you are going to associate with the same security group. So yeah, so as I said, like, multiple security users can be attached to a single security group. So that is what we are just trying to do right now over here. So now we understood 2 tasks. Now comes the third task. So now comes the third and an important task is maintain permissions for security group. Let me also open up a separate tab, and there is a report called functional areas. Now that's a very standard one, functional areas. And I am going in the same sequence of how a newbie, a person who's a newbie to this Workday world, would want to go ahead, like, kind of like, in a troubleshoot mode. What this report gives me, functional area. So you see 100 items over here that probably can vary from tenant to tenant. Reason being, these are our testing tenant, and some of the functional areas are disabled, some are active, some of them are missing in some tenant. So hence, don't go with the fact that here it is 100, you might see a different count in your own tenant, right? So when I try to filter it under the functional area, and these are the functional area which are related to which are there in the Workday. And if I, for example, search for payroll, obviously I see a lot of stuff related to country specific, because you can run US, UK, France, Canada payroll within the Workday. Like, Workday gives you the flexibility to run using there. But for rest of the countries, you can use a Peachy or a Peacock template, right? But So if I pick up a core payroll, like which is a functional area, so what it gives me basically this particular report, it, and right now I'm trying to scan a functional area called core payroll, and I see over here at the right that there are set of domains and then set of business processes associated with this core payroll, right? So these are the set of domains, and these domains basically determines the kind of access which are there for which an user can does have it in the system for them to able to access the payroll data. So let's say, so now I'm going to maintain permission for security group, and I'm getting couple of options. So this has been a recent change, not a recent, but some time back, that earlier it used to only be maintained, not a copy. So Workday has given a option of copying the security permission directly by providing a source security group. So right now what we are doing is, what is our security group? ISSG testing. And when we see it, we see that we don't have any access because it's a dummy, so
Right.
now over here if you see, again we see a table called domain security policy permission and business process security policy permission. So think from an so I'm just I will try to visualize something that, and let me maybe open up a Word document which may help you to visualize. So we have something called security policy. Then we have something called security group, security policy, and these again can be of domain or business process. We have security group, and there is something called securable item. So these are the basically three concepts which you need to understand from the
Okay.
Workday standpoint. So what happens is, like, now what is securable items in terms of Workday? It can be anything, any report, integration, field, object, etc. Collection of these things are called as securable items. Okay. Security group, you know that it's a comprises of, can can be associated with multiple ISU. Basically, multiple ISUs can be part of a same security group. The third thing called security policies, which are again of two types. One is domain security policies, and the other one is business process policy. Okay. Now how are these three concepts related to each other? So think of a aspect that securable items being on one side and security group being on other side of the story. To bind
Okay.
to bind a security group with these securable item, we have security policies in between, playing a agent which binds them together. Now you
Okay.
know that security group comprises of security user, securable items obviously are report, integration, fields and all. So now comes up the question which you asked, right? Like, how do you determine that, if there is a field? So always remember, securable items are what? Report, integration, any field in Workday. Now this field could be again delivered versus delivered or custom field, right? It could be anything in Workday. So anything, any access for any of the securable item is driven by a policy and then granted to a security group. So now hence come the question, like when you see an item among this, like, when you're creating a report and you see a field, when you see a field, how do you determine that what access you need for that particular field to your ISU account so that you may be able to access that field? So a simple example is, let's open one more tab to scan the security of that particular securable item. Like, right now we are talking about securable item, report, integration field. So if I have to take a field, so let's say what, a simple field, email, let's see what comes up. Obviously so many fields will come up. Employee ID. Okay, let's take a easy one. What's happening? This view, I'm not liking it somehow. Okay, where is reporting? Okay, let me open a report itself. It's very clumsy. Okay, so it's just a temporary report, which I just remember that I had created few days back, and I wanted to show you. So we have these fields, like, in this report, and obviously these are Workday delivered fields. Obviously how you can see is like, from the field source, Workday delivered. Now comes the security aspect of the field. Now, how would you know that, like, what associations are required for my report or for my account or any of the ISU user which I am using to have the right security privileges to this field? And remember, I'm taking an example of this field because as we saw, field is nothing but a part of a securable item. It is one of the type of a securable item. So how you can actually see, so you go to the security and you click on view security, and now you getting to know the functional area. So see, now this is the the association right now. So that's why I showed you. So if I scan it over here, the report which was functional area, and it says tenant non-configurable. And if I click over here, so now if you see over here, this particular, so when we talk about this, look at the security of this field, it gives me a table, and what it says is, it gives me the functional area. That's fine. I might not be requiring this, but what it gives me, an information of the security group. Now, if you see, there is a security group listed over here is all user. Now, if I open that security group, it itself says it's a Workday delivered security group, right? So it itself says that all user, there is a security group called all user, right? This field is accessible, and which field? Bank ID is accessible by this security group called all user. Hence, what it means that all the members of this security group access to this particular field in Workday, all users. So that's it is a tenant, and obviously it's a common field, right? Bank ID is a common field. Obviously all the employees of an organization would want to see their bank ID in the system, like an employee. So you will have your own bank ID, I will have my own. See, so these are like common access, like, so what I'm trying to make you understand is the connection between a security group with a securable item here. Hence you are able to see the the security. Now this is one way, like, you go to a particular field and look up to this. Now there could be possibility that you don't remember the field, but you just know that, hey, something related to bank. So there is a task called view security for securable item. So basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to scan the security aspect of a securable item. And now this securable item can be anything, right? It can be anything. It can be a report, field, integration, or anything. So let's say if I just give, and it's a free text, if I just give bank, right? I don't know which field I want to know it. I just want to know any item which is related to bank. And also, yeah, one more thing which I missed out, not only report, it also could be task. So anything which you type in the search bar, you will have these tasks, right? See, how will you get to know? It says report, report, report. So there, like, creates custom report. See, custom report is a task. So when you are trying to search with bank alone, it will give you anything which has, so it will give you all the categories. So what it is giving, all the securable items and also data sourcing. So actually I gave a small list, but honestly it's a many list. So securable item is nothing but any task, any report, any field,
Right.
background process, data sources, data source filter, service operation. Service operation are nothing but the API calls, API, right? So the moment I just gave the bank, right now with related to bank, see, so many tasks are there which have a keyword called bank. If I open the field and I want my bank ID one, see, this is here, bank ID one, right, which we scanned it. So if you see over here, right, again it says which functional area, all functional area, it is part of this one, right? And there are some data sources also. So for field, directly you will, and how will you go it? Okay, so let's say, let's pick up, uh, 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 um, 1 second. Okay, my report is not coming somehow. Okay, might be I haven't given privileges. Report field. Okay, sorry. Under reports. So CR underscore bank. Wow, awesome. Okay, it's not showing up. No worries. Okay, so yeah, so let's look up similar thing. So yeah, so you were talking about the fields. So when you have to look up any field, so when we saw this bank ID, if I have to look up bank name, so what you can do is you can directly click on the last tab which says the security, like, view security. So if I have to scan something called bank account, right, and I click on view security, so now you see a laundry list. Now see this, and this is important. Basically, this screen is important for you to understand. Why? If you see this table, this table depicts the entire story, what we have been talking about. Like how? So we are talking about a field called bank account, right? And here we have a table which gives me this list of security policy. So again, going back to our diagram, security policy, right? This policy. Then you have the functional areas, which you can ignore. And then you have the permitted security group, which are on this one, security group. So what does this says? This basically says that for you, for any user to have access to bank account, right, they should be part of this security group, basically over here, with the right security policy associated. So basically what this is where it plays the entire picture, like how you actually troubleshoot or scan your thing, like, what access is being given to which field, like, if you have to drill down. So these policies are required, and how do you add these policies? That is where the important question is. So for example, these are the security policies, right? We went to a task called maintain permission for security group, right? So over here, everything was empty. Add a click, you add over here, and it asks you for 4 types of things, whether it's a view, it's a edit, or like, what kind of access it is.
Right.
View, modify, or get like that. So you provide, let's say, get input. So if it's an outbound, right? So you can look up only for the get one. Yes. But what happens is like today your requirement might be only outbound, but later, let's say there is an integration inbound where you have to do an update operation also in addition to the read the data, but you will also have to do a update operation. So we suggest that you use a get input. And obviously if you are using a SOAP API, like, Workday delivered SOAP web services, so view and modify those things will also come into the picture. So get input is something what is recommended. And here comes the security policies. So this is what, so now when you know that, okay, I have a field which requires the security policy, and I'm just giving an example. So if I just copy it over here and try to search, see over here it came in. So I am trying to add it. So what I'm trying, and this isn't done. So, and one important thing, see right now I'm in the domain security policies. So whatever we spoke about it, right? We told that, hey, security policies are of two types: domain policies and business process. So domains are basically these items. So the securable item which I mentioned, these are securable domain items. Now you would ask, what are this one BP items? So BP items would be like, basically the business process, like, wherein you are making processes, wherein you are making some kind of grabbing some data from any of the BP, like higher BP, term BP, some processes wherein you are trying to do. So those are like BP, and those associated policies are to be added under the business process security domain security policy permission tab, right? So that is over here. So I have added something and then click OK. Now the picture is not yet over. You might see that, hey, I got added, everything looks good. No, not yet. So there comes, so you have added, but Workday has not registered those changes. So
Right.
now you have to activate those changes. And when you type in activate, there are multiple stuff which comes in. Always remember that pick up this third one, pending security policy changes. I will show you. I'm not sure if you are aware of this first one, which is very important. And ideally, should this task access should be given to only, I would say, like, the administrator probably, because this ultimately rules the entire authentication stuff in the tenant, basically the rule set. Right now we are not interested in that, but what we'll look is the security policy. And the moment I say, okay, activate testing, I mean, I'm just providing a comment, and then it will ask, it will come up and review for the changes. So see, this is what we added. We just, for alias, we try to add it. Obviously it's coming up under my name. I click confirm and say okay. And what it does is, now your security group, and now if I go back to a task called view security group, ISSG underscore testing, and scan it. Now, if you see, it has come over here. And now one important thing to notice over here, we added the security policy, right? This particular one. So now the functional area Workday has automatically interpreted, and how we can see this association. Again, we go back to our this report, which is called functional area. And to show you directly, I will filter it with supplier account. So let me supplier account, filter it. And I had told you that when you do filter with somebody, it gives you a list of domains and the BPs. So now it's a long list, right? So obviously the one which we had added, where is it? This one, process supplier invoice payment settlement, right? So let me search with it, process supplier, where is it? Supplier invoice. Damn, so many. Payment settlement. Yeah, this one. See over here, you see? It's here. Let me just copy it. String is not filtering it. So now what happens is like over here, what we are trying to do over here is that just give me a second. In this one, yeah, association of this policy with the security group, like associating it with over here. And now if in any point in time you face the issue of adding to a particular a report, a task, how you actually try to grab the policy and associate it with the security group, and then obviously your security group will comprise of or may not comprise of multiple users basically. See, it will not be a scenario where you won't have access to all the fields or whatever you have added in your report. So let's think of only from report. Obviously same goes for the integration, but let's say if your report has some 50 fields, right now we have 5 fields. If there are 50 fields and you want to associate this report with owner as not a your account but as a ISU account, then this is a pain point that yes, you have to make sure. And obviously most of the fields are delivered fields, so you will not have a pain point of adding all the time the security is related to build your security group from a scratch. You will make use of an existing security group, right? And then create only the user and attach it to the security group, which will just be a 2 minute task. So what you have to do is go security, view security group. If you are working on a payroll report or a payroll integration, you go and take a reference of the existing payroll integration, see which security user is attached to it, go to the security group of that particular user, and then analyze that security group. Major area of focus where you basically were requiring kind of not a conventional training but a kind of a knowledge gathering on these aspects.